All right, hello, welcome to the latest episode of the movie discussion Pocket Dimension, where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. With me, as always, in this tiny dimension is my good friend Jay, and I'm Cole. And we're apologize for the late start tonight, but you know
Hey
that's how it
Cole.
goes.
Hey
Yes,
Cole, how do you know when a Frenchman's been in your backyard?
I believe it's your garbage cans are empty and your dog is pregnant.
I love that one.
Yeah, some good stuff in there. And yeah, for those of you that are really in tune, you'll recognize that as the subject of tonight's movie, which is the 1986, directed by Rob Reiner, Stephen King adaptation, uh, adapted from the novella The Body, Stand By Me. We decided this also because I think, for myself personally, and I think Jay too, probably, we were in a bit of Stephen King mode ever since when they were getting closer and closer to the release of the It movie, which was something I'd been anticipating for almost a year, probably, because it's one of my very favorite books by him. So I was just thinking, and maybe it'll be really good, and that would be great to see. And I was really excited and stuff. And I had recently rebought a new copy of the book back in like February and stuff, so it lined up. So I read the book again over the summer, and once I had finished the book, I finished with probably a few weeks to spare before it came out. I thought, well, I should read some more Stephen King. So I actually just by coincidence went out and bought the collection Different Seasons, which is the collection of 4 novellas, all sort of notable for, this was released in 1982, for being quite different from what King was known for at the time, and that none of these are horror stories. And of the 4 stories, only really one, in fact, the least known one, and the one that didn't get turned into a movie, The Breathing Method, has perhaps, and it's still debatable, a bit of a supernatural thing. The other 3 don't have anything supernatural, are not horror, although they could have some intense subject matter and stuff, and be fairly dark. But still, I think it was probably a surprise to people when it came out that the King could do this sort of material and do it so well, because I think they're 3 really great stories. You've got The Body, you've got Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and Apt Pupil, which were all turned into pretty good movies also. And I think the best of the bunch is, as far as adaptations goes, is The Body, which was Stand By Me in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one that we talked about is back even when we were first forming the show almost a year ago, just because it's one that we like a lot. And I think it has some layers to it and stuff. Also because it's a little bit more accessible. Like, we try to do stuff off the beaten path too, but every once in a while we like to come and do something that's more accessible and mainstream and stuff like that too. And I think it's just sort of a favorite of both of ours, and we thought it would make for that. And so we thought sort of the timing would line up, since, as we said, over the summer, I think we were both sort of building some anticipation, getting into a Stephen King mode, and then the release of It, and we both have seen It recently, and maybe we'll talk about that a little later.
It's been recommended by quite a few people too. I think like 3 people have recommended this one to us, and
oh, good, yeah. So glad to get around to that.
Joseph Pardue, who's watching live, is one of the ones who wanted us to
great!
this film.
Thanks a lot. Sure.
Yeah, it really fits the mood, I think, because I'm obviously finally got to see it, the movie, and not quite finished with the book yet, but I really enjoyed it. It's really got me in that mindset. So really right along the same themes.
Right. Exactly. Because even though It is his more normal thing in that it's a horror story, the tie here is childhood and having kid characters and stuff. And I think if for people that have maybe not really taken the plunge with Stephen King's writing, or only really know him peripherally through some of the movies and stuff like that, he has a very good grasp of kids, or maybe a good memory of his own childhood and stuff like that. So maybe it's true. Maybe Stephen King couldn't write, 13-year-olds in 2017 to save his life. Maybe he couldn't. But when he's doing it back in his own time, it works out pretty well. And in It, although in the recent movie they updated, which I think is pretty cool, they updated to the summer of '89. But in the book, it's the summer of 1958, which lines up sort of with King's own childhood. And in this is the summer of 1960. Well, actually, it's 1960 in the novella, and they make it 1959 in the movie for whatever reason. It's one of those, we often talk about adaptations, and that's another reason why I want to do it, because I've always had a lot to say about them, and I think I've sort of tried to become more understanding as time as time has gone by. Because I remember years and years ago, before I was as big a movie fan as I was, and I was really being frustrated by, say, the bad comic book movies at the time, because I really just wanted to go like take a popular graphic novel or something like that, slam it down on the table and say, here, film this. And, you know, over the years, I've realized that's sort of problematic, and you can't just do that. And you have to make some changes, and you have to adapt. Film's a very different medium, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with adapting a book and so forth. So that's another reason why I wanted to do this. But yeah, every once in a while, there's like, when they make changes, you're like, oh, I get why they did it. So, but sometimes they make changes that are just so small, like you have no idea why they did it. And that's another one. It's like, okay, it was set in 1960, now it's set in 1959. Okay, good. I guess that makes a difference. No, it doesn't. And like almost all Stephen King stories, or at least a lot of them, of course, a lot of them are set in Maine. For whatever reason, this decides to move it from Maine to the West and puts it in Oregon, which, again, really changes nothing. It doesn't make the experience. There's nothing specifically Pacific Northwest about it. There's nothing specifically Oregon about it. They just do it.
That's
I don't mind.
I don't like it because it's specifically, Stephen King, and it has to be set in Maine. It has to be.
Yeah. The good news about watching the movie is it's easy enough to just imagine it's Maine.
Right.
Like, there's nothing in there, again, that makes you think, oh, this is definitely Oregon. It seems a lot like Maine to me, so it works fine with me. I don't have a problem with it.
Which makes you wonder why they would even change it.
Yeah. Like I said, every once in a while, they'll just do changes that are so small that it's barely even cosmetic. It's just sort of like, oh, they just mentioned that this is different. It's like, okay, that's a bold choice by the filmmakers to make that change, even though it effectively does nothing. Not to jump back and forth, but I remember one thing that we talked about. We haven't really gotten to discuss too much about our various impressions on it, but Jay had said the same thing that I thought too, was that there was a very weird change in that, and like Henry Bowers' father in the movie is suddenly a cop, which serves no purpose and does not in any way affect the story. So you're just sort of like, why? But anyway, that's just a hallmark of all sorts of adaptations. But
it almost took away I forget the Bowers' dad name, but he was such an awful human being, and making him a cop almost, makes him a little bit more, I guess, likable, in that regard.
Yeah, and it makes him, even though he's like an asshole, like the whole point was he doesn't have his life together. He doesn't really hold a good job. The whole point is the Bowers family are kind of on the outs, which leads to his hatred of Mike and his family, because the whole thing is his father blames everything wrong. He's just like, oh, it was the nigger's fault and stuff like that, and he feeds all this racial hatred into Henry, which is why he specifically hates Mike even more than he hates all the other losers and stuff like that. And they try to put that up in the movie and get it across. I mean, it could have been done better.
I didn't feel it at all in the movie as far as the racial tension.
I mean, they do have him attacking him in the alley and being like, "Get out of my town!" And they do have that part where he says like he wishes he could have been there to like burn his parents down, which is again something they added that's not in the book.
Right.
Mike is living with both his parents in the movie. It's like his parents died in a house fire.
I didn't see the purpose for that either.
Which again, I didn't really get.
Other than for his grandfather to give him that little lecture at the beginning about you have to start taking control or start,
yeah, I don't know.
Start, when he wouldn't kill the sheep. He's like, you got to suck it up, start pulling your weight around here or whatever. And
yeah,
I didn't like that.
That was one of my bigger disappointments. Not to completely change the focus of our episode, but as we said, we both have a lot of thoughts on it. We'll revisit it later. But yeah, I will just quickly say that was one, as much as I really, just to not to keep you people in suspense, I really was mostly happy with the It adaptation, and it made me really thrilled to finally see, because I have such a low opinion of most Stephen King adaptations. I feel like very little effort was put into them, and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe we'll get into it later. But anyway, for the most part, I was really happy with it. And I was, in some ways, it actually surpassed expectations. But one of the things that bothered me the most was it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. I felt it could have been a little longer, just maybe 10, 15 minutes longer.
Was it
I feel like it could have used 2:15, yeah.
Wow, I thought it was an hour 30. That's so
Oh no,
crazy.
it's 2 hours 15 minutes.
Man,
like it's not like it's a short movie. Like I don't ever like it's not like they cut out a bunch of stuff. I just felt like it could have used just a couple more scenes specifically to give us an idea of the kids. And I felt like Mike got short shifted. I felt like we didn't get enough of him.
Yes, I totally agree.
And that's also because of that group. I don't know if everybody feels this way, but I mean it's a group of 7 kids. So I think usually anybody reading the book of those 7 kids can pick one kid that they identify with more than the other. For me, it was Mike, even though Bill would go on to become a writer, and I try to be a writer, stuff like that. Honestly, Mike is the character I identified the most with because he just his personality and the fact that he was into history and stuff like that. So I was a little disappointed that sort of arguably my favorite of those characters, I felt like they didn't get enough of him in there and stuff. So that's one of my larger gripes about the movie.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I had no idea it was that long. I thought it was an hour and a half. I don't know why I thought that. I thought someone told me, but man, if that's the case, it zoomed by. It really had to hit the ground running to even tell half of the story, you know?
Yeah. Well, the truth was, I mean, one of the things that was nice is the beginning isn't rushed at all. That whole thing about with, Georgie's death, that's a long scene. They don't just do, they follow the book quite closely there. They have him going down to the basement and getting freaked out. They have the conversation in the bedroom, everything like that. So that's nice. It was nice that that's how I knew right away the movie was probably going to be pretty good, because I watched that first scene and I was like, this is bang on.
I think that's what most people remember about it. I mean, whether or not you read the book or you watched the miniseries, because I mean, it's on the damn poster, for God's sakes. Georgie in the raincoat, holding the balloon.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick too much on the miniseries, but the miniseries just was destined to fail. There's no way. You can't adapt that stuff the way that they had to for the miniseries. Like, literally every time anything bad was going to happen, somebody's going to die or anything, they just cut to the next scene.
Have you watched it again recently?
Yes, I have. I watched it just a few days before I saw the new one.
Oh, you did? Oh, no, I wouldn't have done that. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, well, I just had the opportunity to. It came on Spike with commercials and everything, and I watched however 4 hours or whatever it took with the commercials and stuff. I watched the whole thing.
In probably 10 years, and I remember not liking it at all the last time I saw it. I just didn't think it held up very well at all.
Oh no, it doesn't. Absolutely not. It has a certain amount of charm. Again, there's a few things they do kind of neat, but for the most part, I think it's a spectacular failure when you're talking about actually representing the book. And again, how are you supposed to make it work? This is before an HBO series was possible. This is just normal television series. They don't have much of a budget. They don't have very good actors. They don't have that much time. And they can't give it the proper content or R rating or anything. There's no cursing in it.
Yeah, that's
there's no cursing. There's no strong violence. Every time violence is even implied, they have to jump to the next scene. The whole thing with Georgie is he reaches for the thing and then boom, they cut to, the next thing. And that's what they did over and over in that movie. Every time Pennywise was going to kill somebody or something was going to happen, they just cut to the next scene.
Well, that's why they were so overly brutal in the movie, I think. This is the one that doesn't pull any punches and shit like that. But I just feel like...
Well, I'm happy about that.
Sure. I totally agree. I mean, it's not something that I dislike, but I really feel like if they had gone to HBO or Showtime or somewhere and done another miniseries and done it properly, 10 episodes, an hour,
it could have been even better than this.
Could have been amazing. And I don't think they could properly tell the story, and even in 2 movies,
Mm-hmm.
But
the truth is, this did such a great job that, of course, I'll see the second movie. But
sure,
even in reading the book and stuff like that, just the kid stuff is what I like. The adult stuff is weak by comparison. And as much as I enjoy the fact that, unlike in the previous miniseries and the way the book is told, instead of jumping back and forth between the two, they just firmly separate. Okay, here's the kids stuff that happened in this time, then we will do that. I thought that works really well, but it's going to show all the shortcomings of the adult story once there's no kid stuff to fall back on. That second movie is going to be kind of weak because it's just going to be basically them reuniting, each having individual, encounters with it again. And then just the final thing, and I don't know. I think it's not going to be bad or anything, but it's going to be disappointing considering how powerful the kid stuff is. So I understand why King wrote the book that way instead of having a part 1 and part 2.
Well, I love it.
Then it jumps back and forth.
It's I love how it's all woven together like that.
Sure.
And maybe it wouldn't work as well, told in video format.
Like I said, I think it's one of the strengths of this first movie. I think it makes it spectacular, but I think it's going to really show the weakness in the second part because the second part's not as good as the first part. So you're not going to have that back and forth and stuff.
Yeah.
But
it's like I told you, it's hard for me to separate myself from the book.
Oh yeah, same here, especially considering I read it really recently.
Yeah,
and you think about some of the key differences. And a couple of them I get, like one of the main ones, and this is I have no issue with because they had to change why they'd have this last confrontation, and they turned it into I keep wanting to say Rebecca Beverly being abducted, which of course she's not in the book. But the reason they do that is because they spend the whole like second half of the summer after the show is getting ready to kill it. But the difference was, since it was set in 1958, for those who are at least somewhat familiar with the story, I have no issue again with how they changed it. But in the original, since it's set in 1958, most of the forms that it takes against the children are like classic movie monsters, which makes perfect sense. If you're like a kid in 1958, yeah, you grew up with Frankenstein and the teenage werewolf and Dracula and the Mummy and all these things. So that's basically the different forms that it takes. And this gives them the idea that, well, maybe it'll have the same weaknesses as the form it takes. So they think, well, silver hurts the werewolf and hurts monsters. So it's all about them trying to get these silver slugs together so they can kill it with silver. That had to be removed because they set the new one in the late 80s. And again, I'm glad that they updated it. I like it's true. It's like having the teenage werewolf and stuff. It wouldn't work. I'm glad they changed those things. And they didn't change everything. Some of it still works. For instance, in both versions, Eddie sees a leper, which I think is cool. But anyway, the point is there's no weakness they can seize on. There's no silver for them to make. So they had to come up with a different reason of going into the den. So for this purpose, it's because Beverly gets kidnapped by it, which I'm not thrilled with, but at least to see that's a change, I understand. Logistically, I understand why they did it. Unlike some of those others that are just cosmetic and just like, that's a change for the sake of a change. Like that, okay, I get it. It's what the writing calls for.
Well, they were going down in there anyway because that was where all the drainage intersected or some shit like that. All the sewer systems connected at the house there.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. So some of the reasons and stuff is different because in the original story in the book, like Georgie doesn't disappear. He's right there. His arm disappears, but he doesn't. He's there. He's dead. They have a funeral. He's in a casket and everything. And the whole thing is months later in the summer afterwards, when they're down there in the Barrens, he's not looking for Georgie. He's just hanging out with his friends. They're building a dam. And that's when Ben, who's being chased by the bullies, collides into them. But in this, the whole thing is changed around. It's like, oh, we're only down in the Barrens because Bill wants to find Georgie and thinks that, by following the drainage, blah, 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 he can find him here. So, I mean, that's okay. I can live with that. It doesn't seem necessary, but I can live with it.
Yeah, I can get that too. The whole reason for the sheep scene with Mike, I think, was the only reason that exists was so they can bring that weird ass weapon, that gun thing down there with them, because they don't have the bullseye slingshot.
Yeah. And it's also, and we talked about how this seems problematic too. Like, it seems, we can't say 100%, but it seems really certain that Henry dies in the movie and that Mike is forced to kill him.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that they set up with, right? Like, it's just like, okay, here's what we were told in the beginning. Like, this is Mike taking charge and making a stand. Like, he has no other choice. He's going to have to kill Henry, and that's what he does. Okay, wonderful. Except that, again, how is this going to play into the second part? Because, again, in the original story, in the book, Henry actually does survive and is also part of the reunion later on. He gets locked up in the mental institution for all those years. In the aftermath, it's true, in both versions, he kills his father. But he goes to the mental institution not just for killing his father. He also admits to killing all sorts of people that he didn't kill, that it killed. And the whole point is, when they are all drawn back to Derry, he is too. That it helps him escape, and it leads to this confrontation and stuff. I mean, sure, it's a bit of a letdown. It's not as awesome as we like it to be. But it seems like that's not going to happen at all in the second part because they've killed him off.
Right.
Which seems short-sighted.
I always hate when they do
Maybe they'll
shit
say
like
he's
this.
alive. Maybe they'll say he survived. Maybe he just got really hurt. Maybe he survived that fall and he got real. Yeah, it's a really far fall.
He
Like
fell
it's
like
hard.
50 stories onto a pile of hay bales or something.
They never showed his body or anything, so I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's true.
So maybe they'll say that he somehow survived, and it'll still have the same effect. Like except now he's injured. Like he still got locked up. Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I always hate when they immediately jump into sequels. You know, I always hate because like I'm the same way with TV series. You know, like Westworld. You know, was really cool, and then before it was halfway finished with its run, they renewed it for 4 more seasons. You know, and
yeah, I feel that way too. I thought Westworld was really cool, but I have really no desire to see more. I felt like it told a good story, and now it's finished. Is how
but
I
I
feel.
just
Like
lose
you don't
interest
need more
because
series.
they're writing it to leave it open ended. You know, and I don't like that. You know, I would like to just tell a concise story and maybe you know make another season that's completely different or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's only just going to be another part. Like I heard Rambo or somebody say on one of our vlogcasts or something that like they were talking about like spinning off and doing more It movies. Like that would be terrible. Please don't do that. Just
Man,
tell the story.
they're struggling so hard to find stuff that makes money. It wouldn't surprise me if people go watch it. They're still watching these damn Insidious and Annabelle movies. So
Yeah, for sure. But the difference is those weren't good to begin with, so I don't care. I don't like seeing something that I consider good quality watered down into spin-off junk. Like I think Pennywise is a great, and the entity It is a really good thing within its story. I don't want to see a bunch of bullshit spin-off material that waters it down and brings down the quality.
well,
And that's how like obviously probably a lot of Star Wars fans feel. They're like, I like Star Wars and I like how it's done, but now I'm seeing too much of it, like, and the quality's dipping.
there's so much content in that book. I mean, I can see them doing a few movies out of it. Well written stuff. If the screen, the whoever writes the scripts on it and stuff, the screenplays. I just it's hard for me to see. I didn't have confidence in this movie. I've been burned so many times.
Like I very slowly built confidence as I learned more things. When it was first announced, I was like, "Oh, good, they're gonna make another shitty Stephen King movie." Like it took a very long time and a lot of reading and stuff to start to get like hopeful and think, "Oh, they're treating this seriously." And for the most part, as I said, I'm actually happy. I feel like wow, like this has been around forever and it took you this long to treat it properly. And I know a lot of like our friends on YouTube and stuff like that, and people we hang out have some pretty positive things to say about a lot of the King adaptations. I really don't. I feel like most of them, are almost an insult to the book. I feel like they seem to suggest that King's characters are all schmaltzy and stupid and lame because that's the way they're written for the movie and acted and stuff. And for the most part, most of his characters aren't. I mean, yes, King could be a hacky writer if he feels like it and do some schmaltzy B-movie-esque stuff. But his best stuff is not like that. And yet I've seen a lot of that approach brought to a lot of his work, which makes me sad. So, I was just really happy to see it taken seriously and done more or less right. Like, I mean, especially, the kids were really well done. And they did have to do some rewriting there. It's not 1958, update the dialogue. And it all fit really well for me. I loved it. Like, you still got the same dynamic about Eddie being the hypochondriac with his mom, feeding him all this stuff. Like the dynamic between Eddie and Richie was great. It was my favorite thing in the movie.
Me too.
Like those kids were so good. The parts were written so well. Again, the dialogue's quite different from what it is in the book, but it's the same spirit.
Yes, I agree.
It's still them ripping on each other. It's different. It's different dialogue, but it's the same spirit. Eddie's, a mama's boy and blah, blah, blah. Richie will just go after anybody for anything. Nothing's off limits for Richie. He'll say anything and stuff like that. All that was brought through, and it made me really happy.
The casting of Eddie and Beverly and Richie, I think, were perfect. I loved all three of those. Of course, that's the kid from
Bev's the one I disagree on.
So,
Bev's the one I didn't like. And it's not like I have any problem with it's not like I didn't like the actress. She did a good job. It's not like, I thought she did. I didn't think she was right for the part, but she's the only one.
Why? Why is that?
I don't know. She's just never how I pictured Bev. They seem to make her too tomboyish. And I mean, I get it. She's the girl in a group of boys, but I don't know. And then they added to the whole tomboy thing by having her cut her hair off so that she looked more that. I don't know. I always thought of Bev as sort of like the sort of a shining light of femininity amongst them, and I just felt like they went too far. She seemed too rough and tough, and
really okay.
And the fact that she was like introducing herself to Ben and stuff with all this confidence, like that's really not what she's like in the book. Like,
Yeah, I didn't like the whole relationship with her and Ben at all compared to the book. I didn't like it. I didn't. Ben did stuff that he never would have done in the book, like him having his shirt off in front of Beverly and stuff. No.
Oh yeah, no, like yeah, it's a big part that he's really self-conscious about that. It's not just that people rip on him, even if they didn't. He was really self-conscious of that, and it's a sort of an internal struggle. But yeah, him doing that is. I mean, I get it. That was a bit forced. Them all jumping into the water in the quarry. Yeah. But I get why they had to do it because it was like we need to have them bond somehow. But
yeah,
as I said, a scene I really love, one of my favorite scenes in the whole book. I really wish they had included in the movie, and it's also important because it doesn't have all of them. Because it's a scene with Eddie and Richie and Bev go to the movies together, and they meet Ben, and they take him with them. So it's those four, and they go to the movies. They watch, well, in the original story, they watch two movies. One of them's like Teenage Werewolf, and one of them's, I think, like The Brain That Wouldn't Die or something like that. They watch the double bill, and then when they get out, they get attacked in the alley by Henry and some of his friends, and then they, get away. And that's one of my favorite things in the book, and I really wish they had worked that in the movie, because it would have been cool to show, again, give some extra screen time to some of those characters, show them bonding. It's not a huge thing. I would have liked to have seen it. But,
yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess they were having trouble finding comparative activity in the 80s. Or would they go to the arcade or some shit? I mean,
but I mean, there were still movies, and they even showed the marquee. It was the summer of '89, so they had Batman, they had what was it, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 or 5 or whatever it was, and stuff like that. I was like, so have them see those movies. Like, it doesn't really matter.
I don't like that nostalgia, trying to play to nostalgia. What they're doing is they're playing to our age group. These kids are going to be our age in the next movie. The age of like the nerds that are all concerned with nostalgia, Like 2015 is going to be
I know
7 years later.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know that's why they said it that time, so that the now could be the actual sort of now. So that's doing the math. It works out to late 80s or whatever, which I have no problem with. Like I said, I thought it was well done. So as much as I get upset sometimes when they make changes, like that change I didn't have any problem with at all. I was like, they did well. I mean, yeah, they hit us over the head a few times with it, like with New Kids on the Block and stuff like that. But
I man,
I
thought that was
no big deal
stuff, though. I thought it was pretty.
Yeah, see, no big deal. And actually, yeah, and some of the soundtrack was used really well, like the part of the everything's terrible moment when they're playing what is it, Dear God by Ecstasy, like that works. I like it.
Yeah, this is
good stuff.
Don't go, girl. That was fun. I didn't really like Ben. I didn't like the casting of Ben too much, but he didn't really have a lot of dialogue.
I did. No, I liked him because I was worried that he was only going to be somewhat pudgy, which seems to be what they do with a lot of fat kids. Like, they don't really fat them up. Like, he was fat, and I mean, good. He's supposed to be.
Well, yeah,
it's a big deal. I know that's maybe a silly thing to harp on, but it's true. Like, no, I don't understand these. Like in this movie, for instance, Vern isn't really fat. He's just sort of a chubby guy, and that's fine. He's not written that way in the book. But I just mean I didn't want to see somebody, kind of like what Jerry O'Connell was then. I was worried that sort of type was going to be cast more of like a sort of chubby kid with a fat face, not a fat kid. I was really happy.
Fat ass the whole time when he's really not that much bigger than the other.
Yeah, exactly. So I was happy that yes, it was a legitimately fat kid, big belly, round face, whatever. But I mean, it was important. It's part of his character. You can say that. I mean, you can say, oh, here's their identifiers, this, that, and that, and stuff like that. But I mean, it really is better writing than that. It's not just like, oh, he's fat and that's his identity. No. Oh, he's black and that's his identity. No, like they all had things, and it goes further than that. And they did a mostly pretty good job of that in the movie too.
When they yelled at Mike, though, they didn't say, hey, it's the homeschool kid.
No. Yeah, that was their idea of trying to make him the outsider. It was like he was homeschooled. I mean, it was true in the book he went to a different school. Actually, he went to like a super religious school. So I get maybe why they do that. It's like, well, maybe they didn't have big religious schools by the late 80s. It was lesser things. So he's homeschooled. Fine.
Well, I feel like the race is not even an issue anymore.
Yeah, there's racial subtext with the stuff with Henry, but they don't state any of it. So I don't know if I have a problem with that or not. Like for somebody like me who read the book, it comes across well enough. But I guess if you didn't read the book, you could read it and just like, oh, you don't really understand that Henry hates him more than anybody else, because it's true. You don't get any backstory about how Henry murders his dog.
Yeah,
in a very sadistic, awful way.
For the only reason is because he's black.
Yeah, and it's because he's black. Because he's the black kid's dog. Yeah,
it's like the one.
he called it nigger dog, you know, and stuff like that.
Oh man,
but,
it's so sad when he kills the dog.
I mean, I'm glad that's not in the
man.
movie. I don't want to see that because yeah, it's sadistic as hell.
It of course it wouldn't apply, and 30 years later, it wouldn't be relevant. Race relations had come a long way, and in that period of time.
I suppose, but it's easy enough to still believe that in 1989 you have a backwards fuck like Henry that would be totally focusing on race.
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about the late 50s, man. That's a pretty big time. Maybe not.
Oh yeah, huge. Oh yeah, definitely really different. Night and day. I mean, sure. I mean, 1950s. Yeah. I mean, Henry would have been far from the only person persecuting him. Like, it would have been the majority of people just persecuting him and stuff like that. Not just Henry.
Oh.
Still, like I said, it was easy enough for me to make that sort of leap.
Sure.
And when Henry attacked or is yelling at him outside the car in the alley, he's like, "Get out of my town!" I'm like, yeah, it's because he's black. It's sort of what hits the back of my mind because that is the first interaction we see between the two of them.
Sure.
Stuff.
But I mean, he's kind of like that with everybody, though. Like everybody he sees, he's kind of treats the same way.
Yeah, and again, it's true. Like in the book, they get it across that even though Henry's crazy and he hates all sorts of people, like he hates Mike the most because he's been conditioned to and taught by his father that everything that went wrong in his life is the fault of Mike and his family and stuff. And he's black too, so that makes him, even worse. And stuff like that.
A physical way to identify our hatred.
Sure. Anyway, I think we should swing back around to our actual topic, and we can come back to it and maybe some other Stephen King stuff too. But we'll get into this movie, which again focuses on a group of kids. They're about 12 years old, and this time it's all boys, no girl. I guess if there's one thing you could say the movie's lacking, not that I think that's a story problem, I'm just saying lacking in general. There's not really any female characters and stuff like that, but don't misinterpret that because that'd be like the same thing as like, I don't know, how it is like nowadays. It's like, oh, I really like Stand By Me, but there's no strong, Latino lesbian characters. Yeah, that's a real flaw. Like, why didn't they work that in somehow? The story is the story, okay? People,
racist.
Is the story. It's not because it's trying to leave those people out. It's because it's just a story that involves these characters. And I was trying to think about what a female equivalent to this is. The best I could come up with was, did you see this movie? I don't think I've ever seen it the full way through, but it used to come on TV years ago. A 90s movie called Now and Then. It's like the closest thing I can come up with.
I believe so.
Which is kind of like it, in that unlike Stand By Me, it actually, since it, as the title implies, now and then, it jumps between the present when the girls are adults and the past, which in this case was like the mid 70s, I think.
Oh yeah, I think I have seen that before. Yeah,
it has like Thora Birch and Christina Ricci and stuff. They're like the girls and stuff, and then there's older versions of them. It's kind of funny, like. It's kind of insulting when you not insulting, but I would think maybe I'm just being mean. It presupposes, you know what I'm going to say. It presupposes that Christina Ricci ages into Rosie O'Donnell. Isn't that flattering for Christina Ricci?
Thora Birch got Melanie Griffith, so it's a little bit better.
Yeah. But anyway, that movie is a little obviously a completely different movie and stuff, but it's kind of like the closest thing I come up with a female equivalent, in that you want to talk about like sort of a female coming of age story and set in the past, in this case the 70s and stuff. I haven't seen it in many years, but it's not bad.
There's really not many. I wouldn't say there's very many of. I mean, there's much more with young boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know why. Are boys more nostalgic about their childhoods? Like, I don't know, like, because that's another thing. To come back to it, that's another thing that I've always liked about it before those movies, even just in the story itself, was that Derry reminded me a lot of my own town. In a lot of ways, the Barrens is a lot like areas that I've been in, like not as big, but for instance, Ryan and I grew up on a little no exit street in, I guess, essentially the suburbs that used to be more isolated than it is now. When we were kids, it was more isolated. We had woods. When we were about 13, they cut down the woods there and put up a fucking school that Ryan actually had to wind up to go to. But anyway, and also when they built the school, it built a new road in and made all this stuff accessible. But before that wasn't there. There was woods. So we were a little more isolated. And there was a brook. The thing that I relate to the most is like at the end of our street, like basically you come in the top there's a brook here. You cross the brook, and then you come into where our street is. But anyway, the brook is this brook that runs all the way through my town, Sydney. And I don't know if it ever had an official name, but people unofficially called it the Wash Brook. And it was very similar to what was going on in it, in that it had all the disgusting runoff. And the further it went through the city, the more shit it picked up, right? It wasn't too bad at our end, but it was already kind of bad. And it would actually end up in a place which we don't have anymore. But what Sydney was famous for when I was growing up was that it had the biggest ecological disaster in, I think, all of North America. It was called the tar ponds. It was a horrible, disgusting mess of disaster pollution caused by years of runoff from our steel plant. And anyway, the Wash Brook eventually dumped into there. Disgusting place. But anyway, on our street, it wasn't too bad. It just looked sort of like a brook, and it looked very much like the Barrens. You went down, it was sort of heavily wooded, it was sort of jungle-like, it got so thick and stuff. So a lot of my childhood was spent playing down by the brook, and where it intersects my street, where the street goes over it, there were tunnels that and I used to run through the tunnels. 3 different tunnels, I'd run through them and stuff like that. You know, like if you were fast enough, you could just jump from side to side without ever getting your feet wet, if you're fast like I was and stuff. So that was one of the things I really related to with it, was the Barrens reminded me of playing down by the brook when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and not to get into too big a discussion on this, but I do think it is fair to point out that, as you said, it's sort of aimed at our generation, the way they updated it and stuff. But it's also the last time, because I think our generation, kids who came of age in, like, say, the, I guess, late 80s, early 90s and stuff, I think we were really the last generation to sort of be part of that whole free-range children thing. In that, I figure most kids, like if you're 12 now and you go watch it probably blows your mind that these kids just go wherever they want and are not supervised in any way. But that was kind of what it was like for me and my friends, too. Now, there was, I'm not going to say completely, like, it's not like, not completely, like, as I said, we lived on a no-exit street. So for the most part, our parents said, don't leave the street. Those are the barriers, and that was fine. But all we really had to do to leave would just say, we're going to go such and such. And my parents would say, okay, and then we would. And then we did sort of have the run of the town. So I didn't exactly have the run of the town the way they did, but I kind of did. And I did spend, you know, most of those times, being 12 or 13 especially, like completely unsupervised, going about where I wanted on my bike. And we weren't like right in the town. Like, I don't know, they don't specify how long a bike ride it is for them. Like, it's a bit of a bike ride to get into the town, like to say, go hang out at the, I don't know, the convenience store or the movie theater. Like, that would not have been my everyday experience. That would have been a special trip, but it's still doable, and I could do it. So that was the other thing that I think I was related to. Like, Derry reminded me sort of growing up in Sydney, playing down by the brook, riding my bike to different places, and all throughout that, being basically free to go about as I wanted with my friends. Yeah, and if bullies wanted to kick my ass, there was really no one who was going to stop them or protect me. I had to do it my own or get away or with my friends and stuff like that. And I do wonder if that's something that gets lost in translation now, if like current, again, kids that are that age now, I don't know how many can relate to that. I don't know if they're really living lives like that. I feel like a lot of them are probably more supervised and more restricted.
When I was 5, like I pretty much went all around the whole block, you know. I mean, a few blocks over, you know, on my bike or whatever. And then, you know, a few years later, I was going miles away from home, you know. No big deal. It's weird. It's really weird. I don't know. What is it? The internet news aspect of it? Why is that? Because that
kids are more supervised?
Yeah. I mean, that we've gotten that strict on things, because I can't imagine my kids doing anything like that. And they're older than that. Like, I don't want them going off the street, you know, we live on.
Yeah. Well, as I said, like, we didn't normally. We just did if we had a specific reason to. And
right.
If we did, that was it. It wasn't like, yeah, and then we were out in the town, and that was fine, usually. I don't want to... Yeah, it wasn't like when I was like 7 or 8, I could just wander all over the town. No, but again, by the time I was these kids' age, 12, 13,
sure,
all I had to do was say, oh, we're going to go rent a movie, or we're going to go blah, blah, blah. And my parents would like, yeah. I get on my bike and go, you know, as long as I wasn't going by myself, I was going with Ryan and my other friends and stuff like that. That was fun. And after that, you know, whether there were things they wanted me to not do or not, there wasn't anything they could do about it. If there were areas they didn't want me to go to, I obviously could go to them, and maybe sometimes did and stuff, although that usually didn't come up.
Oh man, we'd go out and, you know, get into all kinds of trouble. play in the woods or the creek,
Yeah,
like
and
you
that's
say,
the other thing.
whatever.
We live literally right next to the woods, so sometimes we would go very deep in.
Mm-hmm.
We would specifically say, let's go really deep in till we can't hear the traffic or anything. Let's go in. So that was a normal thing too. And so yeah, anyway, I was just going to say that was one thing that I always liked about it. It reminded me of my own growing up, even though it was set in 58 and stuff like that. I thought there was lots of names, and the geography of their town seemed to remind me of my own town. And the Barrens, again, was a lot like a place very close to my street. The Barrens was bigger and stuff, but yeah, I had similar experiences down by the brook. And another thing that makes me sad about the movie is, as I said, they've just got Bill trolling around down there. But in the book, they're actually playing. One of the things they decide to do is build a dam, which is exactly what my friends and I often did at the brook. We tried to build various dams that all inevitably failed.
It's all gray water, man. It's all gray water.
But yeah, I know, and I worked in some disgusting water at the time. But, it didn't look disgusting. Look normal.
Yeah, it's kind of like any town in USA, both of the towns in this, in the Stand By Me and it.
Sure.
They're both.
Which, again, makes it inexplicable that for Stand By Me, they decided to move to Oregon. Okay, fine. So let's pick this up, Stand By Me. So we have 4 kids. Scotty, Gordy LaChance, played by Will Wheaton. River Phoenix as Chris Chambers. Jerry O'Connell as Vern. And notable child star Corey Feldman as Teddy Duchamp. And that right off is great because it's really good casting.
Right.
Unlike 90% of the King adaptations out there, that right away shows a really good understanding of the characters to the point that, I think sometimes they're even better than maybe what I imagined when I read the story the first time. They're so vivid and well done. Particularly Corey Feldman. I've never been a big Corey Feldman person. I don't have too much nostalgic feelings for his earlier roles. This is a big exception. I really like what he did. And the fact is because he's doing it seriously. He's not just doing some goof off like he does in most of his movies, which I'm not usually after the role called for. But this role called for something serious, and he did a great job. Years later said the whole reason he was great at that is because Teddy's sort of filled with rage. He's so is Corey Feldman because he had sort of such a shitty life at the time. I guess he and his parents had a bad relationship, and I guess they were exploiting him and stuff. And
well, let's look at his filmography from that period of time. We had so we can start with Friday the 13th, 84, Gremlins 84, The Goonies 85, Stand By Me 86, The Lost Boys. Then he started doing his more adult type stuff after that. License to Drive,
Sure.
The Burbs, Dream a Little Dream. Got onto the 2 Corys kick there.
Yeah, that's when I completely lost interest. Don't care about those roles.
That's some great films there.
Yeah, some really great films. But for me, this is my favorite role of his. It's actually the same for a few of them. Somebody who's not even considered a child actor because he's had such a long career, successful career as an adult, is Kiefer Sutherland. This is my favorite Kiefer Sutherland role by a lot, and we're going to talk about that because it's one thing that's really different about the movie compared to the book, and one of the things I think is really strong because the book only has 1 Ace scene. This adds more scenes with Ace, and I think it's really great. It gives us a better understanding of his character and stuff like that. Because one of the major differences of the story, The Body, is the narrative never shifts. It stays with the boys the whole time. The only thing you get is at the beginning, you get Vern's story about how he overheard about the body with his brother talking to his friend. That's the only part of the narrative that's different, and it's just a flashback told by Vern. But in the movie, they do jump the narrative around a couple times, specifically to show us what Ace and the other Cobras are doing. And I like that. It expands the movie, and it gives us, again, a cooler understanding and appreciation for Ace. They really build on it. They take a character who's fairly thin, not that that's a problem, it's just the way it was written, and they make him cooler. I like it.
Sure.
So it's a story people I can't imagine don't know, but it's about 4 boys, summer of 1959 or 60, whatever you want to call it, I guess. It's the very end of the summer. School's about to start. And it's their sort of the last hurrah. And they have a little clubhouse where they meet and hang out and do all those kids stuff. And another thing is they have their Seinfeld conversations, you know, just talking about whatever and stuff like that. And Vern comes in to tell them about how he overheard about how this kid that had been missing had been on the news. This kid that was about their age had gone missing, about how his brother and one of his friends had been out there and actually discovered the body, but didn't tell anybody. And Vern said, you know, here's our chance. We could go see the body, and then we could tell. And then they get the idea that they could tell people, and you know, people will be really excited, and they get kind of famous for being the ones that say where the body is. But it's actually quite a far trek because his brother and friend had actually been out there because they stole a car and were joyriding around in a car, which is why they didn't want to tell anybody about it. So it's actually a far trek if you're just going to walk it. But then they come up with a plan for how they would be able to do it. And the plan is basically to lie to their parents and say they're going to camp out in a certain area on somebody's property, and then they're going to go to the drag races right afterwards, so that way it fits in the estimated amount of time it's going to take them to do it, because they know it's going to take them more than a night. And so it's about their little journey or quest, as recalled by Gordy LaChance, because this is has some narration in it, and it's done by Richard Dreyfuss. So that's good because it gives us some direct lines from the book. A lot of the stuff Richard Dreyfuss says is actually verbatim from the book.
How did you feel about Richard Dreyfuss in this?
He has a good voice.
I mean,
he has a good narration
voice by his voice, even though wasn't the scene at the beginning. I was reading in some trivia when he's sitting in the car watching the boys on their bikes. That wasn't him, right? Wasn't that
I thought that was weird too.
It was Dukes or someone, whoever was originally cast, and they went back and reshot all that stuff, but they didn't have time to reshoot that scene.
It's a really weird disconnect because I tell you, the last bunch of times I've seen the movie, I missed the first few minutes. It was usually on TV, so this is the first time in years that I actually saw that part, and it took me off guard right away.
Yeah, that is right though. That's not him in the car. I wasn't really paying attention.
No, it can't be. I mean, I don't think so.
It's let's see, the writer. Anyway, I'll find it in a minute. But it was whoever was originally cast as the writer.
Mm-hmm. In this, the order's a little different. So just to let us know what starts him off reminiscing is while he's listening in the car, he hears on the radio that Chris, now all these years later, had just died and that he'd been killed. And then I guess what prompts him to start to write about it, the childhood experience he had with them. It's even more bleak in the book because in the book he's the only one that actually survives. All three of his friends are dead by this point. Chris being the latest, and the other one they at least give somewhat happier endings to Vern and Teddy, and that they're at least still around. Although he says they don't have great lives, particularly Teddy. They say Teddy's been in and out of jail and just does odd jobs and stuff like that. But in the book, he dies in a car crash. He drives drunk and crashes and dies. I think Vern dies a house fire or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. It's a real downer.
It was David Dukes was originally cast.
Okay.
And I believe that's who was in the car at the beginning. And that they were also going to go with Michael McKean. Can you imagine?
No, not really. It's too hard to at this point.
Because they worked on This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a few years prior.
Anyway, I like Richard Dreyfuss very much. I think he has a good voice for it.
Sure.
I like hearing him read those lines. It definitely works for me.
Sure.
So, so right away we get some extra scenes with Ace. In fact, they even have an early confrontation that doesn't happen in the book, where he and Chris are walking out, and Ace, with a couple of them accost him, and we get a good introduction to him right away. Whereas in the book, Ace is somebody who they talk about, but you don't see until the end. So I like that he's in there. We get to see him, and of course, I think Sutherland's portrayal is so great to the point. He's he's a really evil bad guy, but I still find him cool anyway. I mean, you read the book and it's just okay, well, Ace is a degenerate. He's a bad guy. He has no likable qualities. I know I shouldn't like him, but I still kind of like him, even though he's an evil bastard. I have to say, just because I think Sutherland plays it so well. It's he is kind of cool, especially the chicken scene. That's great.
Yeah.
Because they really tell you what Ace is all about right there. It's Ace doesn't give a fuck, He's not pretending. He's not pretending to be tough. He's not pretending to be over the edge. He really is. So I like that scene very much.
That's one of the scenes I always remember about this film. It's that the leeches, that scene, and let's see what other.
Chopper?
Yeah, maybe Chopper, and maybe some stuff with the train. Maybe like what immediately come to mind, because I guess I can say this: my first experience with this movie was Saturday night. My older sister, had rented it, and she had seen it before. And this came out in '86, right? So this probably wasn't, but just a few years after. And okay, a cool family movie. We're all going to sit down and watch it. And my parents are, they're not really a big fan of a lot of cursing and all that stuff. And this film immediately hits the ground running. So we probably watched maybe 20 minutes of it and turned it off. And they had enough. They didn't like the kids cursing, cursing and smoking and all that.
Yeah. I mean, it's good that they don't hold back. Again, just kind of like, can't hold back. If we want to show them as real kids, that's how it was written, so it's nice to see it portrayed that way. Yeah,
which is really ballsy. I gotta say, it really takes a lot of guts to do that, because it's R-rated film. And it did quite well too, so paid off.
Yeah, they're cursing and making off-color jokes and smoking, which we were talking about before the show. Is like, I guess it was before Rob Reiner went on his crazy anti-smoking crusade, because you could just see like the Rob Reiner of today being like, oh, we have to change that. I can't have the kids smoking. Smoking's bad enough. I'm not going to have my kids, and they're supposed to be the good kids. They're not the bad kids. It's like, we can show the Cobra smoking. We can't show the good kids smoking. It's like, it's 1959 or 60 or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, they're all smoking. And that's part of, how it works. And it works for some of the humor too, because it's also in the book, and I like it a lot too when they're smoking, because I think we can all remember like saying this or being around a friend that did something like this when we were kids, where somebody just says something that they think sounds really adult. It's like, nothing tastes better. It's like a cigarette never tastes better than after like a meal or something like that. They say it because they want to sound grown up, And they're like, yeah. And I remember it was like the same thing with my friends. Even when we were a little older, like even being like 16, like talking about like the difference between like this beer is like such a fine brew compared to that beer, some bullshit like that. And I know why you're saying it, because you think you sound mature and grown up and stuff. And I think we all do that. So I always thought that was a good line. So I'm glad that's in the movie. You're smoking. But, wonderfully shot film. I don't know where it was shot, but whether you want to say it's Maine or Oregon, the locations look really good.
Sure.
Nice little small town. And of course, just the woods and them walking along on the tracks. Maine has very similar geography to where I'm from, so a lot of it seems similar to me. Actually, that train bridge they go on, I've walked across one or two of those. I've even jumped off one. It wasn't as high as that one in the movie.
I thought you'd walked across the one in the movie.
No, I've walked across one or two that are like the one in the movie.
Never have. I don't think I would do that.
You wouldn't walk it? No. Well, that's. I was gonna say, as we get to the kids, and as I said, all the portrayal is very spot on to the book, and they mention, without having to give too much background, that Teddy is quite crazy and he has no regard for his safety at all. And at least with Teddy, you understand why, because he had such a weird upbringing. His father had sort of cracked coming back from the war. His father was really abusive, had held his ear to the stove and burned it off and stuff. So he had a really, really sad upbringing and home life. His dad was now locked away and subject to ridicule and stuff like that. So Teddy, on one hand, loved his father and hero worshipped him. He was a hero who stormed the beaches at Normandy, but he's also this awful bastard that did this to me, and all the conflicts in there and stuff. So it makes perfect sense that he acts out the way he does and stuff like that. And yet, even though Gordy is more like me in that I was, in many ways, I was more of a quiet, soft-spoken, deep thinker type. I don't think at that early age I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I was at least prone to writing and did a little bit of it and stuff. But when it came to how they acted out on the road, I was more like Teddy. And except there was nothing really psychological driving me. I just pushed things. I was a daredevil, and I did physical things, and like dodging a train. I never did that, but yeah, I thought about it. And yeah, so walking across those trestles, no big deal to me at all. Climbing something. It's in the book. They actually describe it vividly in the book, but they only just mention it in passing in the movie. He says, remember when you saved Teddy in the tree? And they don't say what it is, but in the book it's described that he and Teddy and Chris were climbing a tree, and he wanted to get to the very top, even though Chris said, no, the top, the branches are too small, they won't support you. And of course, Teddy's like, I'm going to do it anyway. And he goes up, and then he falls, and Chris manages to catch him. That's that. So if people have only seen the movie are wondering what about the tree incident, that's what it was. But so I was like that too. I had to climb everything. I had to get on the top of everything, especially heights. I was nuts about heights. I had to get on everything, climb everything, see the other side, balance on things, swing from things, whatever. Except I didn't have any deep psychological reasons for doing it. I don't know. I'm still kind of that way. I mean, I'm more measured in control. I'm supposed to be an adult, but I still have those urges.
I think he has a death wish.
Yeah, I didn't have a death wish. I just had supreme confidence.
Right.
I didn't think, and the fact was, it's not like I never fell. It was never the thing that, sometimes I think not falling is maybe what makes you more afraid of heights, because you don't know. I was like, I've already fallen. It can't be any worse than what's happened before. Even though sometimes that didn't apply, because there were times where if I fell, I would have died. But anyway, that's kid logic for you, right?
Fear of the unknown.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, surprisingly enough, the filming locations, primarily they were in Oregon and some in California.
Yeah, so beautiful locations, really well done. My favorite shot. The movie has so many shots I like, but again, this must have been one that I must have consistently missed seeing, even though I don't know how. Maybe just looking away or something, because this is a while since I actually watched the movie start to finish. And jumping ahead here, it's the scene where it's after they've already spent the night in the woods, and now they're starting out again the next morning. And there's a part where they go back to where the train tracks are, and there's a shot where Teddy and Vern are about 20 feet ahead of the other two. The other two are walking, so they're a little further up, and we're seeing them from the back as they walk through. And to the left of Chris and Gordy, there's like this old, like rustic red water tower thing, and it's even leaking a little bit. And the sun is up. I just love that shot. That shot is so gorgeous to me. It makes me so happy even just thinking about it. I love that so much. I think it probably ties into some childhood memory that I can't quite specify and stuff, because it just reminds me so much of places I've been and things I've done. Maybe a water tower that looked like that. I think that's one of the more perfect shots I've seen in a movie. I love it so much. And there's even a bit of water coming out of the tower. It's leaking.
Yeah.
I really like it. So yeah, so the parallel thing is while they're doing this, they figure they're the only ones that's going to check out the body. But of course, as it's said in the story, that Chris's brother, Eyeball Chambers, or no, sorry, not Eyeball Chambers, even though he's one of them, but actually Vern's brother and the other guy, they eventually wind up, even though they said they're not going to tell anybody, they basically spill the beans to the rest of the gang. And the gang say, hey, why don't we go check it out? We'll pretend we're fishing, and that way we can get the thing. And the whole thing is they don't even leave till the next day because they don't have to. Actually, that's when they find out. But they are just going to drive, and they take the two cars, and one of them being Ace's car. And it's Ace's idea, really, to do it, because they're still a little nervous about it.
Yeah, they didn't.
And it's a great... Right, they didn't even really want to go. It's like, well, okay, how about you guys go, and we'll just stay back here. And again, this is not in the book, and I think it's a good improvement. This is the one... This not only... I think there's 3 or 4, maybe, really great adaptations of Stephen King's work, and this is one of them. And it might be the best, because I think it might be the only one that's actually better than the source material because of the stuff they add. And most of it is because of Kiefer Sutherland's scenes as Ace. And I just love that part where he's just like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Get in the fucking car or something like that. And they're like, okay, like, I just love how, like, Ace just rules this. There's supposed to be a bunch of tough guys, but Ace just rules them all. Like, most of them, they're not real tough guys. They're like the normal high school tough guys. Yeah, they're a bit tough, but Ace is actually something different. He's on another level. Like, he's going to be like a fucking criminal for sure. He already basically is. And I like him. And there's just some funny stuff too. And that's the other thing that's too, like, our main group, they have their like funny dialogue with each other that is mostly in the book. They do invent some funny dialogue for the sake of the movie for the Cobras. Like the part where they're just before that, where they're trying to mark each other and they're carving Cobra into each other. And one of them's just like, it's just like, I've been dating her for this many weeks and she still only lets me feel her tits and stuff like that. And Ace is like, it's because she's a Catholic. You got to get yourself a Protestant girl. Beat. Jews are good. I love that. It's good stuff. So it's nice to see even the bad guys, the unknown, they get a little bit of humanizing in them too and stuff.
Right.
I think it also harkens back to something that like I can't relate to, but I knew a few kids that was like this, and I don't know if it's. I guess I don't think this is a generational thing. I'm not really sure, but the idea of somebody having an older sibling that truly hates you, because Chris's older brother just obviously hates him. Vern's older brother hates him. Like they are very happy to actually inflict harm on them. Like they're not going to stand up for them and say, that's my brother, that's enough. It's like, oh, good, kill him, fuck with him, I don't care, beat him up. I did know a few kids that, at least allegedly, supposedly, like they had older siblings like that, like that did not like them, did not think, well, at the end of the day, you're my brother. Like, no, they hated them, they didn't like anything about them, and they would be happy to hurt them.
Yeah, it was usually with kids that were pretty close in age, is what I saw. But, you know, on the contrary, Gordy's brother, who I don't know if we mentioned yet, died, what, 4 months before?
Yeah, something like that.
In a Jeep accident and whatever, with the Army or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, he actually, well, he says he didn't really even cry when his brother died, but, or he cried, but he didn't really. But I mean, the way he talks about his brother, he did care about him quite a bit, and you know, the movie kind of shows that.
Well, it's another distinction between the book and the movie. Once again, where the book is more bleak than the movie. In the movie, you have some flashbacks, and you see that his brother was played by John Cusack, is very, even though they're much far apart in age, his brother seemed to really like him, and was close to him. And they have a moment where he's like, "Ah, come here," and he gives him a hug and stuff. And he stands up for Gordy, like, while because the whole point, which is in both versions of the story, in both versions, not that part, but what I'm saying now, sorry, I don't want to confuse people. So that, but here's something that is in both versions of the story is that, unlike, say, in It, because we have a similar thing, in It, Bill is dealing with the fact that after Georgie died, his parents haven't recovered and they basically ignore him. The same thing is happening here with Gordy in the wake of his brother's death, but the difference is that even when his brother was alive, his parents still treated him sort of the same way, because the brother was the one they favored, and they have him, like, you know, saying, like, him actively saying things to his parents at the dinner table and stuff, and they're just ignoring him so they can talk to what is it, Danny, or whoever his brother's name is.
I think it is Danny. Yeah.
But anyway, there's no such scenes of warmth in or flashbacks or anything in the book. He says that, like, his brother got along with him fine, but, you know, there was a huge age difference and they didn't deal with each other much. They decided to play that up more in the movie. They showed that they had a genuine, warm, loving, close relationship, which did not exist in the book. I don't mind it. It's a fine change. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and, you know, I like John Cusack for his just, what, a few seconds of screen time almost.
Yeah, it's basically two scenes, a dinner table scene and then something where they're sitting and he gives him his hat.
He gives him his hat, yeah.
And that's about it.
The fucked up thing about that is he gets the hat, right? Like, he really likes the hat. His brother dies. And then, you know, Ace comes in. Ace, like, steals the hat immediately. And that's it. No more hat talk. You know, like, there's no, like, you think he'd be pissed off about it, or...
Does he keep it?
Yeah, he never gets it back.
Oh, I forgot that.
Well, I think they discussed it off screen, and I think they both came to the conclusion that he just threw it in the garbage. Ace threw it away.
Even though I just saw it, I couldn't remember that. Because, yeah, I know that, again, that added scene where he and Ace meet in the town beforehand. Again, in the book, they don't meet until the final confrontation with the body and stuff. They have a little preview, which I like. I like, again, you know, have them a little more screen time for Ace and a little clashing and stuff like that. But yeah, for whatever reason, I forgot about that thing. I knew that was how it started. He took his hat away, and then Chris says something to him, and then he threatens him with the cigarette to show you how far he's going to go, unless Chris takes it back. Chris does, says, "I take it back." Yeah, so that's River Phoenix in there. We talked about River Phoenix, of course, when we did My Own Private Idaho, which was several years later. But this is young. This is the young River Phoenix, sort of a star-making turn. Once again, just so well cast for the role. In that it was, I think it's true that the other, just like the boys in the story, the other actors I think kind of looked up to River, saw him as a little bit more mature and cool, and the rest of they were and stuff. So it just fits the character dynamic perfectly, because that's how it was. That Chris was sort of the unofficial leader of the gang. He was a little more mature and cool, even though he had a bit of a bad reputation because of his family. And as we find out, it's like, you know, it's too bad, because Chris is actually a good kid. One of the emotional arcs for him and revelations that happens to him and Gordy is this whole thing was that at some point earlier in the school year, he'd gotten in a lot of trouble for stealing milk money from the school. And then, you know, he's talking about his place in this town and how everybody just thinks, well, you know, nobody in his family's any good. He's no good and stuff. And he's like, nobody even asked me if I took the money. And Gordy says, well, did you take the money? He said, yeah, I took it. Of course I took it. But then there's a beat and he's like, but maybe I felt bad about it and I tried to give it back and stuff. And then you find out that that's what happened, that he did actually try to give it back. But the woman saw this as an opportunity to get some free money. So it's just like, she took the money, didn't tell anybody, blamed it on Chris, and then spent the money on herself.
Right.
And, you know, it's a sort of a big emotional moment when he's talking about that and he's just crying. And, which you understand, you know, he's talking about how hard it is to live in a small town where everybody's already judged you and, you know, you don't have any chance because people already just automatically think you're no good. Because that's one of the coming of age things we're getting in the stories about how now they were 12, they're going to go and be into junior high the next year, and how they're worried about drifting apart and stuff. And he's saying, well, Gordy, you know, you're smart, come from a good family, you can take, you know, the good courses, get into a good college and stuff like that. But somebody like me, I'll be stuck, you know, with the shit courses and making birdhouses and stuff with these guys. And he's trying to convince Chris. He's like, you might have that reputation, Chris, but I know that you're smart. You can do it too. And he's just saying, it doesn't matter because this is how people think of me.
Yeah.
And stuff. So some good heart-to-heart stuff there. And he's not wrong. Like that's still true now. That can happen. Where you can get labeled as that, like based on like, you know, what your family is or something like that, or something somebody connected to you did.
Well, his dad's a bum, rummy alcoholic, and his older brother is already in the pen for like rape and robbery or something like that, and his other brother is Eyeball. So.
Yeah, Eyeball. Yeah, they don't mention it in the movie, but yeah, he's got like 2 or 3 younger siblings that Eyeball's supposed to be responsible for that he just leaves.
Yeah.
So he can go off and hang out with his friends and do petty crime and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm just trying to remember the scenes and stuff.
Yeah.
The music evoking the time period, of course.
Well, we can't forget the barf-o-rama, if you want to go there already.
Yeah. And I like that they take the radio with them, which is pretty cool. I mean, It's 1960 or 59, however you want to say it. So there's some big entertainment for them.
They get enough doo-wop on the radio.
Which, you know, it is something like I respond to.
Sure.
Because I think it's not like I want to complain about today, but it does make you more appreciative when you think like when you have less options and less things. Like the fact was they couldn't take an iPod shuffle with them or anything, or an iPad or anything like that. But they did have a radio, which was sort of like their window and their chance for entertainment. They couldn't pick the songs, but that kind of made it more special, if you ask me. The songs were what was played. And I kind of, you know, there's something neat about that. Like nowadays, if we want to hear a song, we just find it.
Right.
Find it on YouTube or like that and stuff like that. But the anticipation of waiting for like the top 40 countdown and stuff like that. Like, I mean, I'm not even old enough that personally myself for that, but at least I can remember something like that, like watching some music video I wanted to see because I couldn't just look for it on YouTube and stuff. But so yeah, I really like that part. That they're, you know, they're out sort of in the wilderness, but they have their little link to the world through the radio, which I always think is kind of romantic and cool in a way. I don't know, but I like it. So it's something that's cool that works very well in the movie, of course, as opposed to the book, because we get to hear some of the music and stuff, and it helps set the time period. As you said, some of the doo-wop and stuff. You got Lollipop in there, and at one point they're going down, and it's who is it? It's Buddy Holly. You know, good stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, it's appropriate. If you're going to do something set in that period of time, you got to have that type of music.
Sure. the Junkyard and Milo Pressman. I guess we don't really have to talk about it, but the only thing I'll say there is, of course, the Junkyard with Milo Pressman. The big thing is Chopper, the feared, and it's mentioned that Chopper was the most feared dog in the county. But it's just by reputation, because it actually, as we find out, is just sort of an ordinary dog. But a little wrinkle that's in the story that's not in the movie, and we've talked about this before, about how Stephen King does have his little nods showing that all his stories take place in the same universe. Here's another one. Chopper was the most feared dog in the county until about 20 years later when Cujo went rabid.
Oh, shit.
That's something that gets it dropped in the body, which is kind of cool. They could have mentioned it here, but this time Cujo had been a movie in 1983. But anyway, it's no big deal. But it's a little wrinkle I like. Yes, you don't have to pay attention to them, but Stephen King does leave his little things here and there, which are cool.
Oh yeah, man! It's like just the similarities between this and it. Like, what is it? Highway Patrol? Is that the show that was Ben's favorite show? And they also mentioned it.
Yeah, that's right. When they're that's right, because they were saying in the flashback or not the flashback or whatever, when Vern's brother and the friend are talking about how they could at least just call in and make an anonymous call to let the authorities know that where the body is, and that way they won't get in any trouble. He's just like, they trace those calls. I saw it in Highway Patrol and Dragnet. And it's like, but that's right, Highway Patrol is Ben's favorite show.
It must have been a pretty big show for Stephen King. Because, this is him. Yeah. He's writing about his childhood. That's exactly what he's doing.
I mean, Stephen King's always pretty transparent about his author avatars. I mean, 90% of his main characters are writers.
Right.
And of course, and Gordy LaChance is here one too. And not in the movie, but as you said, the barf-o-rama. So we get one of the stories. There are two stories in the body. Not that we really need it. It wouldn't have translated well to a movie anyway. But we do get one of his stories that he wrote when he was like years later in university. And that's obviously sort of a nod to Stephen King's own experience trying to be a writer in university and his frustration with the profs, because the whole thing is, what was it, like the prof had like told him, like, the prof was going on and on about things like themes and symbolism and stuff like that. And he's just like, well, when can a story not have that? Just be about telling a good story, and and everybody shunning him. But then him managing to sell a story, so he shows like the check or whatever he got to show that he could actually like make it as a writer. I think that's obviously very close to Stephen King's own experience, where I think he went to college or whatever and was surrounded by people that all wanted to write the next great American novel and be literary geniuses, where Stephen King just wanted to write entertaining stories and be a writer.
Yeah,
maybe have some ghosts and monsters in there, not make any big splash as far as being a great literary contributor and stuff, and maybe being looked down on for it and stuff. So there's a bit of that there.
They were telling Bill that it had to be like politically motivated, or was that what it was? Because I know one of the kids put on a play about against the war or some shit. And,
that's right. I am getting mixed up. That was Bill. That wasn't Gordy. You're right. That was Bill that did all that. But anyway,
that's hilarious.
I sagged over into it, but you're right. So that is, but there is still something later in the body when I'm talking about that story that. Just he just basically, when you read the story, he points out some of the flaws. He's just like, one of them being like, he's like, there's two female characters in it, and like one's a slut and one's a liar or something like that. Yeah. He's like, I had a lot of issues back then. I didn't know what I was writing and stuff, which again, I think relates to maybe how Stephen King feels about some of his early works, which is, I think, true for any writer. There's stuff I have that I wrote even as recently as maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God,
I don't really think he needs to be looking at it like that, because I mean, there are women that are that, and there are women that are not that. I don't really think you need to. So he's trying to say like he had misogynist tendencies or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think it's just because he's saying like it was maybe his first attempt to write women. I think is all he really means.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't really speak to that, but I thought he did a good job. I mean, you know,
I have no reason to believe this and no outside validation, but I've always felt like, actually, I write a lot of female characters. A lot of my main characters are female, and I feel like I have a pretty good knack for it, but I have no idea. Maybe I'm completely off. But I feel very comfortable writing female characters, to tell you the truth, even though obviously there's all sorts of things that I can't relate to personally. I think maybe I just gleaned enough through other fiction or something to fake it, maybe.
But I mean, how different could it possibly be? I mean, men are from
I guess
men are from Venus.
I guess it depends upon what you're writing about for the most part. Because it's not like I could, as confident as I am. Like, for instance, I couldn't write a story about a woman that like has to have an abortion or something, because I couldn't be like, oh yes, I'll be able to write about how this woman feels about it. Like, no, obviously not. So I mean, I do know my limits, but I do think for most part, I think I can do that.
You can write about the first time she got her period.
Yeah. I learned that from Carrie.
Yeah. Stephen King writes about it a lot, huh?
Yeah. Although Stephen King himself said like the whole reason Carrie worked was because his wife helped him with the more female stuff.
Oh, okay.
He credits his wife big time on Carrie, that he's just like, she helped me with that. Because actually that is true. Like, I don't think Stephen King really is a big, most of his main characters aren't really women.
Yeah.
Not that they don't exist. Like, I don't think anybody's going to be like, Stephen King, as I said, misogynistic or something. No, I don't think so. I mean, Stephen King is one of those authors that's written so much and is so popular that it's true. There's people that will accuse him of anything, obviously, somewhere, because he's that big, he's that popular.
Sure.
I know right now stuff that we would never even consider our wildest dreams. There's people accusing Stephen King of. Just like people that just can't understand like fiction at all, right? Like people like being like, we've joked about how in it has that scene where the kids actually engage in sex, which is pretty shocking and weird and stuff. But it's just like, yeah, okay, well, everything in the book is shocking and weird. We're just making a distinction because, again, of how we perceive sex as somehow worse. What about like the kid getting ripped apart, or that's also shocking and weird, and yet we're focusing on this on the sex thing. And I know there's probably people that to this day, because of a novel he wrote in 1982 that had that scene, that probably think, oh, Stephen King's just some sick fuck writing about kids getting it on, like what the hell, like
he's just
fine.
a pedophile.
Exactly, like he's a pedophile, and that's like a fantasy for him. Like, whatever, sure. But
like you said, he's so big. I mean, people are going to say,
people will believe. There's going to be people from every corner and stuff like that.
Well, I think these days, just being a male means you're automatically sexist or misogynist. I mean,
it gets pretty close to that in some instances, I have to say.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't make me afraid. Hopefully, if someday I get published, I'm not at all afraid to put myself out there and write female characters. And if people want to say I got it all wrong, fine. But at least I'm trying. Yeah,
I mean, like I said earlier, I don't know how hard it could, I mean, how much different it would be from a man's perspective. But
depends on the situation.
Sure.
But like I said, the whole point of being a writer is that you put yourself and you write about things. Write what Stephen King says it himself in the book, write what you know. Well, that's kind of bullshit. Write what you know. Well, like, don't listen to that. People take that way too literally. Yes, if you know a lot about a subject, sure, why not work that into what you're writing? But don't think, oh, I wanted to write about this, but it's not my personal experience or my job or whatever, so I better not. Like, that's ridiculous.
Well, he's a perfect example of that, too. I mean, obviously. These two stories we're talking about are good examples of, he's writing about his childhood.
Sure, but Stephen King also goes in other directions too.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, as I've said, I think he has a good grasp and a good memory and stuff. I think it's true that a lot of people really very quickly forget their childhood years. Like, they know sort of the beats, but they don't remember how it felt and stuff. Like, I'm glad I haven't lost that. I think a lot of people do. Like, they're like, yeah, I was a kid and I did these kid things, but I don't know how well they really remember their kid self. Or some of those experiences, like what they were like. Like, they knew they happened, but they don't remember how it felt.
Well, yeah, I've heard some theories that, the older you get, the the less percentage of your life was your childhood. So, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's just a blur almost.
Sure. I mean, it's true. It's not like I can say this happened. You know, I remember specifically when I was 7. I remember this specifically when I was 9. You know, sometimes it's like I'm not sure what age I was exactly. I think that's pretty normal. I mean, obviously, if you have some really big memorable moments, then you can probably, you know, slap an age on there because it's just so memorable. I don't know, like, say somebody really important in your life died when you were 11. You're really going to remember that you were 11 at the time, for sure. But other things, I think. But I don't know. But
it's just strange things that I identify with and that I remember. It's like I can remember, like, you know, movies. You know, movies are a big part of my life, always have been.
Sure.
Like I can remember what movies I saw in the theater, you know, who I saw them with, you know, what I did that day. It's so odd that I attach those memories to, you know, specific, you know, movies. You know, even
movies
when I was
definitely
a kid.
help with that. Yeah, I think movies help with that. But just like I remember, like the way I talked, like I talked differently than the way I talk now, and the things my friends and I said and stuff like that. Like, I think a lot of people forget that stuff. But Stephen King clearly seems to either remember it or fake it pretty well because I like his dialogue for the kids and stuff. But I mean, honestly, if I'm writing dialogue of, say, like a conversation I had when I was 12 in the mid '90s and stuff, you know, I could do it. But I don't know if everybody else could. I think they would probably still. I think a lot of people would just sort of think they talked the same way. In many ways, I talked the same way, but obviously there were buzzwords and things like that. Here's a word we used a lot. As far as I know, the only people that still use this word are people in Boston, and I don't even know if it's true. But we always said "wicked."
Oh yeah,
when I was a kid.
Wicked hard.
We'd be like, "That's wicked." Like we meant awesome.
We did.
But yeah, we could say "wicked hard" too. Or
wicked hard.
And that's just something that's completely disappeared. Unless, yeah, people are making fun of people from Boston. Because apparently Boston still like to hang on to it. Because it's a word I lost. But when I was a kid, I used it a lot.
Yeah, I did too. You think when Stephen King was writing Dreamcatcher, he was like, all right, I'm just going to take some shit from these other movies and just make another movie or these books and make another book.
I feel like he probably didn't put too much effort into Dreamcatcher because it's not a very good book. I mean, people can say, "Oh, I think the movie could be done better." I'm like, I don't care. The movie could be perfect. The book's no good. It's how I feel. So
yeah, I've never read Dreamcatcher, but everyone I've ever heard has said it was bad, except for like Pizzow says it's really good. And,
the book,
yeah, the book, and someone else that we
Ryan is kind of an apologist for the book. He feels maybe
him, yeah.
Like, he seems to feel like, you know, the movie could have been a lot better if they were closer to the book. And I'm just thinking it doesn't matter because the book is crap. But yeah. I think he has kind of a soft spot for the book.
Well, he's come out and basically said that book's shit, and it's because I was on like massive amounts of painkillers, right?
Yeah, and I agree with him. I only read it because, I don't know, I don't like quitting books.
It's just, I remember like
there's a few Stephen King books I dislike more, but that's not because I think they're worse. It's just like I don't like what they're about. For instance, I hate the book Insomnia. I'll never read that again. I don't like reading about some guy who's like 75 years old. I don't care if that makes me ageist. I don't like reading about the lives and experience and adventures of some old man. It's never going to work for me. Even if I am 75, I doubt I would find that compelling. I don't want to read about your weird geriatric sex scenes.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I hate Insomnia so much. That's probably the book of his I've read that I really don't like. Other ones I can be like, it wasn't too bad or stuff like that. And some I obviously really like.
Not familiar with that one. Is that more of a recent novel?
Insomnia? I don't know. It might be late 90s, early 2000s.
94.
94? Okay. So it's older than I thought. Yeah, I hate it.
Set in Derry.
Yeah. I can't even really mostly remember it, but the main character's a really old guy, and I don't know, there's weird beings. It's vague now, but I just couldn't stand it because honestly, I hated it just because I didn't like having a super old main character. I was like, he's just some old bastard. And I mean, a lot of the book is about the limitations of being old. And I was just like, this is just scaring me about getting older. I'm like, yes, I get it. Your body breaks down and you don't look good anymore and blah, blah, blah. Like, I know, like the book just bothered me from that perspective too.
And I'll be honest with you, I've really getting back into Stephen King. I haven't read a lot of his newer stuff.
Me neither.
Like I mean, newer stuff is in the past like 25 years.
Yeah.
Like I read a lot of his short story stuff when I'm in like 12 years old. I read a lot of that stuff.
Same here.
And I just haven't really gone back to it because I don't know why I haven't, but I'm really gonna try to get back into it now. And
yeah,
check
I
out
definitely want to get like Night Shift and stuff. Like this is the first of his collections that I bought. This isn't short stories; it's the novellas and stuff. And
Yeah.
I'd like to buy some more of the short story collections and stuff like that. Even though some of the short stories are funny because it's like they're only there because Stephen King's a big name. Because some of them are totally throwaway.
Yeah.
Like Lawnmower Man and stuff like that.
Yeah. That was one I remember. I think I read that one after I saw the movie. It was just kind of like,
well, nothing could be more different because all it is a title. It has nothing to do with anything.
That's funny because he sued that whatever studio that was so many times.
They did eventually. They did at first have his name on.
Yeah.
It was like take my name off, and it's nothing to do with anything. It's just a title.
The entire theatrical run, I think it had his name on it until it came out on home video. I think is when they took it off. But everyone already knew it as Stephen King's Lawnmower Man by that point.
It's too bad because it's not terrible or anything, and it's not like it disgraces the original short story because the original short story is terrible too, just in a completely different way.
And I think it's a fun, crap movie. I mean, I don't really think it's great or anything.
Yeah. It's like a techno thriller. It's not Stephen King's type thing at all, right?
Oh. That's funny.
One of the earlier techno thrillers. That's like 92.
But Stand By Me, he's actually a big fan of. I think when he saw it, he said it was the best, the best adaptation he had seen.
I think it is. I think, and as I've said, for those who are wondering or in suspense or whatever, and I'm really hard on Stephen King adaptations. I feel like the best ones are Stand By Me, actually the new It gets up there, believe it or not, Misery, and Shawshank Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are
mostly horror stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about People? Sorry.
It's pretty good too. It's not up in that echelon, but it's pretty good. It's a really awesome story. It's really arresting. And that's another thing where, like, I don't actually blame anybody in the app pupil thing because they did what they could do. But the book is it can go places that the movie can't. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the movie. They sort of did what they had to do. And one of the things they also did was they condensed it. Like a lot of things that happen in movies. And I don't just mean condensed the events. I mean the time. In the original story, it takes place over like 4 years. So you'd have to have the kid aging a bit. You can't really do that in a movie, right? So, and this it's a shorter time period. So the kid starts off already older. So one of the things that's a little more disturbing about the story is he's only like 13 when it starts.
Oh, wow.
But,
I've seen the movie. That's the only thing I have to go on.
It's a good movie. I would put that in the second tier of Stephen King quality, like not the top, but I would put it in, definitely pretty good.
My list is going to be Langoliers #1. The Dark Tower,
Langoliers again isn't a good Langolier isn't a good book, and it's a struggle to get through. But it's still not nearly as bad as what happens, and it makes Stephen King look like just a madman. Like the acting and everything is so bad. It's just like, this is what Stephen King writes. Bronson Pinochet going, "You're scaring the little girl." Like, no, even in his wildest nightmares, he didn't write characters that shitty and terrible. But yeah, like if you were brought up on like most of his like 80s and 90s movies, you probably figured Stephen King was just some hack that wrote a bunch of schlocky bullshit with B movie stuff. It's like, yes, he likes B movies and he throws stuff in there, but a lot of his stuff is good quality, and that's why it made me happy to see it treated in a quality way, because I just feel like even some of those other movies, like that people say are like not too bad, like, again, I get it, because sometimes it's like, well, how seriously you're supposed to take a movie like Christine? Like, okay, I get it. Christine's pretty silly, so fair enough, so I'm not going to come down too hard on it, but it's not something that I'm going to think is, oh, that's classic Stephen King. It's more like, that's forgettable Stephen King I don't even want to think about.
Yeah, that was an odd period of time when the miniseries stuff was coming out. Like they did, What was first? Was it first? It was one of the early ones, like, and it was actually.
It was 1990. I don't think anything was earlier than that.
So
1990.
It was pretty well received, I think, by pretty much everyone. And then like Tommy Knockers, Langoliers, Golden Years, The Stand.
Yeah.
Am I missing any?
Yeah. See, The Stand is my favorite Stephen King book, and I have a soft spot for the miniseries, but I just crave for it to be done properly. Because I think in the miniseries there are things that they do right, but there's too many things that do wrong that cancel it all out. And again, it's a lot of just limitation, right? And it just is such a bad budget. Like the effects are terrible, and if you want to talk about like little tiny changes that make no difference, the best example ever is in The Stand. In The Stand, it features a very old woman named Mother Abigail, who can remember like the 19th fucking century. In the book, she is 108 years old, making her a very specific kind of human being. There's very few humans that are that age. For the miniseries, they decided she would be 106 years old. Did they think those 2 extra years were just too unbelievable? They were like, 108, pull it back. 106, that's like...
That's that screenwriter working for that credit, man.
Yeah. Like, I made it my own there.
Yeah. Got to put my stamp on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah. See, things like that are just ridiculous. But there's some things that still stand out to me. Like, I hate some of the... Like, I hate... What's funny is, like, I just think the casting's either really good or really terrible. There's no, like, decent casting. I thought, sort of our main person in there, what's his name? Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, Gary Sinise?
I thought Gary Sinise was a very good choice as Stu. I thought he fit very well. Mm-hmm. I liked Rob Lowe as Nick very much. And I liked... And I really liked, what is his name? He died. Ferreira.
Oh,
Miguel Ferreira. And I really liked him as Lloyd. After that, the casting is, to me, batshit awful.
But Laura San Giacomo.
Who's that?
I don't remember who she is in the show.
I know Molly Ringwald's in there, which is awful.
Oh yes, yeah.
Molly Ringwald is
about half of that damn miniseries. I couldn't finish it. This was. You remember we did the Stephen King show on the Sausage Factory a few years ago? I think I tried to watch the Stand, and I got farther than I did the first time when it was actually on like live.
It's I would at least say it's really watchable. Like, even for something that long, it's really watchable. Like,
if I was on an airplane or something. If I was, like, strapped down somewhere where I couldn't move or click on something else to watch.
Well, see, that just shows it's failing then, to me. Because The Stand, to me, is his best novel, so it should be an amazing movie. That's what needs to happen.
It's like you said, it was budget reasons. I mean, a lot of the acting is very subpar on there.
Yes, very subpar. The effects are subpar, and the music is crappy and forgettable. I mean, I like the opening with even though it's a little on the nose with "Don't Fear the Reaper," but then it's all downhill after that.
You've seen Sex, Lies, and Videotape, right?
Long time ago.
Well, not Addie McDowell, but the other woman in that movie is Laura San Giacomo.
Well, I don't know the name. I know that a woman from Best Just Shoot Me's in there.
Yeah, that's her. That's her.
Oh, okay. Isn't it weird? Like, I shouldn't even bring it up. What are people going to think of me? Because I always manage to work this into shows and stuff like that. But she seems to have, like, really big breasts back then. And as she's gotten older, when I saw her in, like, Just Shoot Me, it didn't seem as much. But maybe. Like, she seems to have, like, really big breasts in The Stand. That being 1993. Like, there's a sex scene where, again, a horrible casting and horrible acting job. Whoever it is, the guy playing Randall Flagg is awful. Where he's like gonna like have his way with her and stuff, and like I don't know, like the top she's wearing is really pushing them up and stuff like that. And you have to remember that some of this stuff made an impression because the age I was when I saw it. Like I was seeing this when I was like 11, so I'm gonna remember the big breasts. Sorry.
Yeah, totally, man. That's the first thing I thought of when we were talking about the stand. They're still pretty good size, and Just Shoot Me.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to revisit.
That's
yeah.
misogynistic side of the sausage of not the sausage factory, the pocket dimension.
People want to see it that way. That's fine. I do not discriminate with breasts. All sizes are great.
I mean, when you put them out there. I mean,
put that out there. Just put it out there. Just put it out there.
Oh, they put them out there, so.
Whew. So, getting back to this, I'm thinking of like some of the key differences, and again, I like them. So one of the things that it's easy to forget if you haven't read The Body in a long time, or if you've never read The Body and you don't know, is that they switch around a couple things that Gordy do and that Chris does. In both versions of the story, Chris is the one who swipes the gun from his old man. His old man's an old crazy bastard, so it's easy enough to believe he'd just have a gun lying around, which Chris takes because he thinks they'll need it for protection. Leads to some pretty good comedic moments that night where they hear the coyotes, so each of them has to stand guard, which is cool. You've got Teddy doing like narration, imagining himself as a soldier, keeping them up. You've got Vern flipping out every time he hears a sound, and it's amazing he doesn't kill everybody. But then later, you know, the whole thing, when it all comes down to the big confrontation, when they finally find the body of the boy, the gang, and they have the confrontation, what happens is in the book, Chris has the gun, so Chris pulls the gun, and he's the one that threatens Ace. I like the switch that in the film Stand By Me, Gordy takes the gun and does the standoff and threatens Ace. I think that's better. I think it's a cooler thing for his character to do. For Chris, it's a little kind of expected. They've already had a standoff. I like that it's like Gordy sort of stepping up after being a little more passive and relying on Chris to protect him. I mean, sure, he's using a gun, but still, he's stepping up. He's being proactive. And there's different dialogue there that I think is actually better too. This is not in the original story that I like very much. Specifically, when Ace, pointing out that there's like 5 or 6 guys with him, he says, "What, you going to shoot all of us?" And he cocks the gun and he looks at him, and Will Wheaton says, "No, Ace, just you." I really like that. Yeah. And I think that's a really good change. And another switch, this isn't as good, but another switch is actually in the story of The Body, when early on when Teddy wants to do his train dodge, it's Gordy that pulls him off the tracks, where in this it's Chris. Again, I think this makes more sense. I think it makes more sense that Chris is the one because he's sort of the father of the group. He's the protector. But by the end, with the thing and it being so personal and everything bubbling up inside of Gordy, he's the one that takes initiative and pulls the gun. I like that switch. I think those were both good choices. I also like that they don't have the rainstorm. In the book, the final confrontation when they're up like standing over the body and stuff happens in like a crazy rainstorm. To me, that's not needed. I like that the movie does away with it. It's just sort of an ordinary calm day.
Yeah, the movie they state it hasn't rained. Or wait, no, it's the book. It says it hasn't rained in like all summer.
Yeah. Right, and that's the big foreshadowing because then there's like a big storm, like the day like thunder cracking and the rain comes down, and that's and it seems very dramatic. But then when you see it in this movie played out without the rain, it seems fine. It doesn't seem like it needs it. You don't feel like you need rain and thunder and stuff. It seems like it's enough to me. So I think that's a good change too. Although it probably could have worked both ways, I guess. But I don't miss it. I don't see the scene and think, oh, if only it was really pouring, would have added to the drama. I feel like there's enough drama in there without Mother Nature. And we skipped over some of the stuff, but that's because it's sort of obvious and people know the story and stuff. But again, there's some good lines in there, and they talk about how some fairly predictable things about how his friends really enjoy his writing. He tells the story of Lardass, and it's cool to see it in movie form. You get to actually see Lardass and the barfing stuff. Having recently rewatched, I'm thinking they kind of half-assed the barfing because it looks so fake. You can just see them going and it like shooting out from behind their cheek. It's like, come on.
It's supposed to look stupid though. It's supposed to look like cartoon.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, so I won't gripe about it. But anyway, and the fact that his friends really enjoy the story and stuff, and he's being encouraged, but at the same time, he feels like, oh, his father doesn't approve of it, and it's a waste of time. He has to be sort of encouraged by his friends, particularly Chris, saying, no, you have a talent, you should do this. Yeah, that's pretty obvious stuff. There's not too much point in harping on it or going too deeply into it. It is what it is. It doesn't need a lot of analysis. It makes the point it's supposed to make.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the relationship between Gordy and Chris, really. Because he kind of lost touch with the other two.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just, you know, I think Richard Dreyfuss writes it towards the end, you know, it's the, you know, best friendship he ever had.
Yeah, which is actually another really good choice, because in the story, The Body, that line about never having friends when you're 12 happens extremely early. In this, he ends it with it, which is more dramatic.
Perfect.
In like one of like the book, the story's broken into some chapters, and like one of the first 2 or 3 chapters ends with that line, but it's much more powerful at the end of everything instead of. So I like that they pick it up and move it.
Yeah.
Trying to find it here. It's written slightly differently, and it's a little bit earlier.
So are we going to go and get started on the screenplay for the breathing method?
It's not needed. It's not nearly as good as the other 3 stories in here. It's definitely weak compared to. It's a fine story. There's nothing wrong with it, but the world doesn't need a movie of it. But
perfect timing, though.
Yeah, that's for sure.
People give a shit about Stephen King.
Well, he's not lacking for better material. He has a lot of material. Not that I wouldn't even call it weak. It's just weak when compared, because I think these are 3 really strong stories. This is one of the things I think, again, coming out in 1982 starts to really validate him as a solid writer, not just some horror guy. And there's a little afterward, and that's why it's called Different Seasons. He talked about these stories, the difficulty for him being twofold. One being they're not full novels and they're not short stories. They're in that uncomfortable novella sort of thing, which makes them difficult to publish by themselves. You're not going to put them in a magazine or something, and you can't sell them by themselves because they'd rather have a full novel to publish. And the other thing being he was already starting to being typecast, pigeonholed, whatever you want to say, as a horror writer, and people weren't expecting that from him. So he came up with the idea of taking these 4 and putting them all into one collection and releasing them that way, which works really well. So I can't imagine what it would have been like, because I'm not old enough, to have been like reading Stephen King from like his breakout with Carrie into the early 80s, and then reading this. I think this would have been a neat revelation, because you're like, wow, he can write more than horror. He can write, you know, deep, compelling characters, blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's it's kind of tried to say, but, you know, this guy Stephen King can really write.
Yeah. Yeah, he really can. And if he's done a quantity over quality thing, well, I can't blame him.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think it's, you know, I think writers have that happen in their career. It's probably not uncommon.
Sure.
I mean, hell, I mean, he's way more successful than, you know, virtually all other writers as far as, you know, length of career wise.
Yeah. And I know he works hard. I would never say he doesn't work hard, but I do sort of suspect that like writing is almost a compulsion for him, which I'm jealous of, because I really have to focus and clear my mind and not allow myself to be distracted if I'm going to write. Like, I don't think it's, some of it's discipline, but not all of it's discipline. Some of it's just writing is just hard. Part of me, I feel like, for me to make a stupid, clumsy sort of metaphor, like for me, writing is a lot like the whole sculpting thing. It's like the story's there, but I have to chip away to get to it and stuff. Whereas I think Stephen King writing is like a fountain that just spurts out of it. I feel like it's almost effortless.
Yeah, I mean, at least he'd make you believe that, even if it's not the case.
I mean, to be that prolific. Because, I mean, think about it. If he never wrote anything besides the Dark Tower series, he said he was writing the Dark Tower series. He got to a point where the way he'd plotted it, he was writing it at such a pace that even in his lifetime, he couldn't finish it. So he sped himself up to the degree that not only he could finish it in his lifetime, but well within his lifetime. He also did this while constantly writing tons of other novels. And that just makes me sick to my stomach because I couldn't do anything close to that. Because if somebody just said, here, I don't care what you write, man. Here's a magic ticket. Write bullshit and it will get published, and that will be your job. You don't have to put any effort into imagination or quality. Just write bullshit. I would still fucking struggle. And yet Stephen King is like throwing everything at the wall, and it's all sticking. It's all getting published, and even the worst of it is still passable. But yeah, so writers should not compare themselves to Stephen King.
No, it's
especially not if you're a horror writer, because it'd just be like, imagine like you, I don't know, were somehow didn't know who Stephen King was, but you knew about some of his work. Imagine somebody was just like, hey, you like the Shining? It's like, yeah, that's a really great classic story. Great story. Well, how about Carrie? Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Psychic stuff and stuff like that. Name like 7 more classics. Like, oh yeah, they were all written by the same person. Oh, he also wrote The Green Mile. In case you were wondering about that, remember The Green Mile? Hearts in Atlantis. Oh, he wrote that. You didn't know that?
Shawshank Redemption.
Stand by Me.
Number 2 on
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah,
he wrote that. You're just like, what? It's all the same guy. Like, oh yeah, and all those Richard Bachman books. I know they're not great, but they're him too. But yeah, so it's a little intimidating and discouraging for somebody like me who just wants to publish something, write something, and he's just got a crazy body of work that goes back to the late '60s. Where I'm thinking like the stuff I wrote in college, I don't even have anymore.
You need to start doing code.
Clearly, I mean, him being an awesome he was super productive and amazing in the '80s when he was like on coke and an alcoholic to the craziest extreme.
Well, he wrote some of his best stuff. I think a lot of people would say.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, you can just imagine the pressure. I mean, the pressure on you to get something published. I get that, but then when you're Stephen King. You've already taken the what they call it, the deposit. You've already gotten paid on the front end. So now
I don't know if I can do that.
Produce something.
I've never been that confident in my creative abilities. Like if I was in a band, I guess it could. It does, I guess, but I would reject it. I can't do it. I couldn't do it for anything. Let's say I'm an amazing hockey player. I couldn't sign like a 5-year deal. I couldn't do it. I have no confidence in myself. They'd be like, you scored 40 goals last year, so you're in for a big raise. I'd be like, I have no idea if I could ever do that again. Please don't. Please, no. And yet, all these players are just like, yep, that's what I'm worth. And they take the money. And maybe they do it, and maybe they don't. Half the time they don't. Same thing, I don't have that ability. Now, I'm a creative person, but I have no idea when my creativity is going to run out, man. I couldn't be like, oh, I'm in a band, and we just had a great album. And then, like, the record company's like, here's a 6-album deal.
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, I have no idea if I'll ever finish another one. No clue. And it's the same thing with a book. I couldn't write, like, here's, like, a 9-book deal. Like, what are you talking about? I wrote 1 book. Maybe I can write another, maybe. Like I don't have that confidence. And even, like I said, even if I write a book and it's really great, it's the New York Times bestseller. There's no fucking way I could take money for, like, another book. I'd be like, I have, maybe I can write it, maybe I can't. I can't do that.
Well, that's how you do it, as a career. I think, isn't that how it works?
It is, but I mean, at the same time, some people, even some of the greatest, they only had 1 in them.
Sure, absolutely.
She wrote, what's her name? She wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. That was it. I mean, she just wrote this. Harper Lee. She just wrote the sequel like 3 years ago. Until then, she's always known. You look her up on Wikipedia. She is an author. What did she write? To Kill a Mockingbird. What else did she write? Nothing. And there's
she just wrote that, or they just found that? She wrote
that. She wrote that just a few years ago. But I mean, like Margaret Mitchell wrote Gone with the Wind. Amazing book. That's it. That's all she wrote. And there's lots of one and dones out there. So I have no idea if I'd be a one and done or not.
Boo Radley's back.
Right now, I'm just trying to get to 1, so we'll see. But yeah, I just don't have that sort of confidence. Even if like I had an agent or something, it's like, well, that's how it works. I'd be like, I can't take the money, man. I can't. Like it would drive me insane. I would go insane from anxiety.
Yeah, it was Go Set a Watchman. Was written in the mid-50s and published in July 2015 as a sequel, though it was later confirmed to be To Kill a Mockingbird's first draft.
Okay, so that's how it works. Still, for many years, she was a novelist who had written one novel.
Yeah,
That's how it was.
Yeah,
and there's the world is full of novelists who wrote one, and sometimes they were great. But for every one of those, there's some Stephen Kings out there.
It's very stressful, I can imagine. Like, this is my job. I'm a writer, so write.
Yeah. And that's what I have to keep telling myself, even though nobody's paying me at this point, because I'm just like, well, you want to prove yourself. The first step is right. Yeah. And yet, I'll use every excuse in the book sometimes. I'll just be like, I'll come up with all sorts of excuses not to do it.
Yeah, I think that's human nature.
I think it is too, but like I said, as much as I admire Stephen King, I don't feel necessarily compelled to listen to him everything, because he said on writing, if you can't get yourself to write 2,000 words a day, then you're not serious about being a writer. I flush that down the toilet. I'm like, I am serious. Don't tell me I have a quota to write a certain amount of words a day. I'll do it my way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean that's what worked for him. I mean,
yeah, exactly. That's what worked for you. But anyway, don't want to get too much into that sort of stuff. My own ideas about writing. Because it's like, well, are you a successful writer? No. But we'll see.
Working on it.
What can be done. Working on it.
One day.
But in the vast world of coming of age movies, this might be my favorite. I love it on a lot of levels. Like, if people don't know, it's one of my favorite movies. Really, it just is. I love the music. I love the casting. Not only do I think they do a great job of adapting a good story, but as I said, they add in and make some changes that I think are for the better. I really like Kiefer Sutherland as Ace. I love his extra scenes to give us more stuff with him and flesh out the story. I even like the stuff the kids wear and stuff. It all fits in. And we get some of the nice the music of the time, setting the tone. Which leads you to the title change. I don't know how necessary that was. I guess the body sounds really creepy. So I guess it makes sense if you want to make a heartwarming sort of coming-of-age story. The body is sort of misleading. It's like, that's pretty creepy. And Stand By Me does seem very heartwarming and, all those fuzzy things that you're supposed to feel. So I don't mind it.
Yeah.
When that song plays at the end, I do feel a bit of a disconnect. I was just like, this doesn't seem, even though it's from the era, it doesn't seem to fit in with everything else, but it's not a big deal. I really like the song. It's a great song. But, I don't know. I feel like not a lot of effort was put into the title. I agree with them changing it from the body. I don't know if Stand By Me is a great title, but whatever. No big deal.
Yeah, I can totally see why they changed it from the body. Selling it as a story about friendship. It really is. The body's really irrelevant to the story.
Yeah,
it's getting just, to the body.
Yeah, yeah. But, as people say, what is it? It's the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. Which
is very much true, and that's even commented on, because he talks about that their trip back isn't eventful, and there's no point talking about it. He's like, the trip back just felt a lot quicker, as it often does. You go to see something, that's the big thing. So when you're going back, it's not really worth telling. And he says, and he's like, we barely talk to each other and stuff, which is, I think, very true to life and stuff. There is some stuff about their feelings about it as it goes on, because at first it's really exciting. Oh, their kids are going to see a dead body, and then later, after some stuff happens, he says, we are going to see a dead kid. Maybe it shouldn't be a party. It's like, yeah, you're right. And there are some good lines, which I think is from the book too. Like when they finally find the body, it's just like, the kid wasn't sick, the kid wasn't sleeping, the kid was dead. And everything hits them, because at first the whole idea is, well, we're gonna get personally something out of this, because we're going to be like heroes when we tell people. And then that has a very sobering effect, not just seeing the kid, but also the whole standoff with Ace and those, because that was the other thing, right? What was really at stake when Ace and the others are going to take the body? Well, nothing really. They could have just let them do it, but something in them, after the journey they've made, what they've done together, it would have been inconceivable to let Ace and them. It would have been obscene, I guess, to them. They made this journey together. They came together. They fought so hard. And now, these pricks were going to take it from them. So that's why they make this stand, which I really like and respect. And Not everybody gets to have a moment like that in their childhood, but you know, I don't think I ever had anything that dramatic happen to me in my childhood, but still sometimes I think I can put myself in a situation like that and figure I'd act the same way or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've definitely had standoff with older kids just over different things.
Yeah.
It's usually about It's usually about something like street hockey, though.
It's just so, you know, a lot of his stuff keeps going back to the really, really violent older kids. It's like, you know, like in the movie It. You know, those kids were like 4 or 5 years older than those other kids. Yeah. You know, it's why are you picking on kids that age? You know, what the hell's wrong with you?
But that happens, though.
I guess it does. I never encountered.
I wasn't afraid of kids my age. I was afraid of the big kids. I didn't have any trouble with kids my own age. The only trouble I ever had was with older kids. Ever. You know, I was never really consistently bullied. I wasn't a person who was ostracized or bullied or anything like that. And I wasn't usually afraid, and I had friends. But that didn't mean there weren't people I didn't want to steer clear of and wouldn't give me a hard time. There were, and they were all older. None of them were my age group. They were all at least 2 or 3 years older, at the very least. The only time kids have ever tried to hit me, they were older. So yeah, I just think that's pretty true. Like it's the weak, that's the strong picking on the weak, and being older is a big advantage. Kids.
I mean, what a bitch you got to be to pick on younger kids, though. I don't know.
I know, but that is the world.
Yeah. I never encountered anything nearly as violent. I would have, yeah.
I don't think I ever encountered anything that violent. I mean, there was at least implied violence, but I don't know how much they go through with it. But there always is some of that. Stephen King's not wrong. Like, as I said, people watch a story like It and they see somebody like Henry Bowers. Well, he's making the point that Henry really is pretty fucked up, to the point that the guys that are with him are kind of shocked by it. Yeah. And they show it in the movie too, like where he's going to cut Ben. His friends think he's just going to scare Ben with a knife. They don't think he's going to fucking carve his name into him. Like, and they're actually shocked and horrified by this. So it's not like Stephen King is saying, oh, this is typical. He's saying, yeah, Henry's a special kind of lunatic. And same thing with Ace. Ace really shocks the rest of them. They're all, you know, they're sort of like fake tough guys. Oh, we do this and we do that. But Ace is the real deal, and that's what I like. And if people were really upset by Ace and they don't like him, and I like him, in the Stephen King universe, Ace dies. Ace dies in the novel Needful Things. So, if that makes you feel any better.
The same Ace? It's the same character?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
It's years later. It's like when he's like 40 or something.
Huh.
Now, something we don't get in Stand By Me that I don't mind, and sometimes they do go overboard, so Stand By Me basically ends with their return to town and the little epilogue saying how they themselves put in the anonymous call so that nobody would get credit for claiming the body, and then them having little goodbyes with each other, and just sort of the affirmation that's like, you know, I don't know, maybe we're going to lose the other two, but we are still friends and we're together. And we're going to stick together, and Chris is going to pull himself up and he's going to do this. And we get our little epilogues that are a little sunnier than in the thing, in that, well, at least they live, except right up to the point where we find out about Chris dying, which is true to the book too. But the book also lets us know that, you know, there's consequences for what happened with Ace. They all do get caught up by the various bullies at different times, and they all do get hurt quite badly. And I understand why they didn't put that in the novel, in the movie, because it'd be quite a downer. And you don't really need it.
But yeah, and
but it's kind of funny.
That's how Eddie's arm got broken.
Oh, in It, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about It.
Yeah. No, in this, there's an epilogue. There's an epilogue in the body that says, like, you know, within the next few weeks, they all each of the four of them had various run-ins with various members of the gang, including Ace, and they all got beaten quite severely. Maybe somebody does get his arm break. Yeah, because of that. Because Ace said, you know, we're not going to forget this and stuff, and In the movie, it's just like, we're not going to forget this. And Chris just says, oh, maybe you will and maybe you won't. Where he's like, we're going to get you for this. And he's like, maybe you will, maybe you won't, and stuff like that. And they make fun of it in an episode of Family Guy when, I don't know, there's a Family Guy episode that is 3 parodies of Stephen King novels. They do The Shawshank Redemption, this, and what's the other, and Misery. But anyway, in this one, he's just like, he says, oh, Ace, get out of here. And he's just like, you've got a gun right now, LeChance, but later I'll go and get a gun. Then I'll come to your house and kill you. And he's just like, hey, wait, you're right. We live in the same small town. This is a huge plot hole in the story. But I'm thinking it's actually not a plot hole in the story because it's completely addressed in the story. But they don't address it in the movie exactly. They just leave you wondering. Although, again, since he's saying an epilogue, he doesn't say anything like, well, Ace did catch up with us and kill us. So it's obviously...
Yeah, he killed me a couple years later.
Yeah, writing to you from beyond the grave. But so I don't have any, even though it's more true to form, I don't mind that they pretty it up a little for the movie and give us, you know, it wouldn't have fit the tone. The movie doesn't go quite, the movie is good, but it doesn't go quite over the edge, and that's fine. We don't need really to find out that those cute characters, Jerry O'Connell got his face bashed in and stuff like that. You know, it was enough that the threat was there. The threat was there and stuff. But, yeah, Rob Reiner, as we were saying before the show, had a really good run. I mean,
oh yeah,
this was part of it. It was one of my favorite movies ever. Spinal Tap is one of my favorite movies ever.
Me too.
I don't like romantic comedies. One of the only ones I've ever liked is When Harry Met Sally. It's one of the only ones I like.
How do you feel about The Princess Bride?
Super overrated, but it's fine. Like, I don't... People my age go insane for that movie, and I have no idea why. Like, I mean, sort of course, nostalgia, blah, blah, blah. But still, like, it's, I don't know, it's fine. Yeah, I get it. It's kind of a send-up of fairy tales. It's like a fairy tale parody. Yeah. It's fine. But, a lot of people I know really like it. I went to university with a girl. That was her favorite movie by, like, far. I remember she asked me about, she was quoting it, and I couldn't even remember it. And she was, like, horrified that I couldn't remember it and stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of know that movie. Like, I don't really even know that movie much growing up. I knew I'd seen it, but it wasn't until I was like an adult, really, after maybe even her prompting me to watch it. This is when I'm like 18 or 19 and stuff. It's not like a movie that was a big part of my memories or anything. But anyway, it was a fine movie. It's fine.
Yeah, I had seen it, plenty of times.
Sure.
And I revisited a few years ago, and yeah, it's totally overrated. I agree with you.
Yeah, just has this crazy reputation that I can't really get, but it's fine. But what was I going to say? So yeah, so he was on a really good run that was completely obliterated by one of the worst movies ever made, North, which is so bad that you don't even understand how it got made. Because you could say that about a lot of movies that are bad, but the difference is most of the ones that are that bad, like, you get why they made because, well, they're probably just some independent shitty movie with a bunch of nobodies, like Troll 2. It's like, yeah, this is absolute garbage, but who cares? It's just... But how does something like North get made? By Rob Reiner.
Bruce Willis?
With, like, with Bruce Willis in a bunny costume.
Yikes.
It had Bruce Willis. It had, God, hold on. I need to look at all the people that are in this because it's crazy. I mean, it had Bruce Willis. Obviously, it starred a big child star at the time, Elijah Wood. It had hot names. It had Kathy Bates, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Jason Alexander, who were obviously a big deal at the time. John Lovitz, John Ritter, Alan Arkin.
Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal? Oh, for fuck's sake. So yeah, so North was like a big deal. It's like, coming this summer from Rob Reiner, North, and yeah, and I mean, not to completely change the tone of this show and stuff, but honestly, that movie is so bad, like, I can't do it justice. So if you haven't watched the movie, you should watch it, because people watching me now, because you will just be floored, because it's bad in a way that is baffling. Like, you have no idea how it could have happened. The movie itself is it has a stupid plot to begin with, but it goes so much stupider than it sounds. I could describe it to you, but it's way dumber. It's way dumber than I could describe. And it has musical numbers in it for some reason, too. And the tone flips all over the place. Because at first it's just about a kid that wants to have new parents for no goddamn reason. But eventually there's like a kid at his school who turns evil and tries to have him killed. Even though it's supposed to be like this funny comedy and stuff. It has like some of the worst half-ass stereotype bullshit you're ever going to see. It's like, here's people in Hawaii. Here's people in Texas. You know, and then it's all... It's like the worst like Saturday morning cartoon bullshit you've ever seen. But thrown into like a movie that was supposed to be made by like a big studio with a famous director and good actors and a big budget and stuff. And I have no idea what the point of the movie is, what they're trying to do. It's unless like maybe they're trying to baffle you, because if that's it, mission accomplished. Because that movie is startlingly awful. You're just so caught off guard by how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, after that run, I would have thought Rob Reiner would have had a pretty, you know, he could choose what he wants, you would think.
Yeah.
And that's what he chooses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people, this is always brought up anytime people talk about North, but I might as well do it too. Here is Roger Ebert. I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it. I mean, that kind of says it all.
That's pretty awesome.
It didn't win any of the Razzies it was nominated for, but it was nominated for a shitload of them. Worst actor, Bruce Willis. Worst supporting actor, Dan Aykroyd. Worst supporting actress, Kathy Bates. Worst screenplay, whoever. Worst picture and worst director. So, yeah, Rob Reiner, who was on this great run, produces something spectacularly bad. Oh, I also had a 9-year-old Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, that's right. She played his sister. Not that she was important in it or anything like that.
She was also
I'm always really caught up.
3.
Yes, she was. I'm always caught off guard by the kid, Scarlett Johansson.
And then she got enormous breasts and was all over the place.
Funny how that works. Or no, she's just one of the best actresses of the generation, clearly. Yep.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with her.
My only problem with her is the usual, like overexposure. Like,
yeah, sure, yeah.
She's the it girl, so they just shove her in everything. Like we talked about this when they were doing the Ghost in the Shell thing, right? Like, why her? Why? Well, because she's bankable.
You know, I watched that damn Lost in Translation again.
Yeah, not your type of thing.
No, I actually liked it quite a bit more.
It's growing on you.
Yeah, I didn't care for it.
I honestly haven't seen that movie in years because it's one of those movies that makes me feel like sad and weird about my life, so I actually can't watch it again for a long time.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
I do really like it.
Yeah.
What's funny is like back then, like you had no idea who Scarlett Johansson was. She was just some actress.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was just annoyed that Bill Murray was doing this. You know, he was on this. I guess he still is. You know, when he teams up with Wes Anderson and does these dramas, which you know I like Wes Anderson quite a bit, but you know, I want to see him do comedy again, and I don't think that's going to happen. But
well, every time he seems to try, it doesn't work out. I mean, I watched like Walk the Casbah for like 10 seconds before I turned it off.
Yeah, well, was that bad?
Yeah, no, that was bad.
I haven't watched any of his stuff because I know he did that Christmas special, Very Merry Christmas.
That was just confusing and uneven. Like, there's nothing essentially wrong with it. Like, it does sort of what it's supposed to do. But what's confusing is when it lives in this world where, okay, is Bill Murray playing himself, and various people come up playing themselves, but then other people who are just as well known are not playing themselves. They're just playing roles. And that's weird and confusing when that sort of thing happens. Like, if you're going to have people that are just playing roles, they can't be well-known people then. Just fill that out with unknowns. That way you can tell who's really who. Like, that's one of the things. But it's just like a weird little underwhelming thing. Like, I don't know. I mean, I get it. Like, what's her name? Miley Cyrus. She actually has singing talent, but it doesn't matter because she chooses to sing bullshit I don't like. So the fact that she can pull off a Christmas Carol well isn't going to just turn me all around on it.
Right.
I'm like, I know she can sing well. She just doesn't have good music. But, yeah. I don't remember very well. It's a fairly short thing. It's like, what, 40 minutes? I don't know. It's definitely not going to be becoming a Christmas tradition for me. Not being like, I better put that on in Christmas mode. No. I mean, the only reason I care is it's like Bill Murray. I like Bill Murray. Christmas. Oh, I love Scrooged, but nothing there.
Well, yeah, it's just like you hit a brick wall all of a sudden. Like, I mean, I like What About Bob? I know a lot of people don't care for it, but I mean,
I like it okay.
Still some funny moments in there.
Speaking of that, a little tie to this movie. That's like the movie like where Richard Dreyfuss basically decided he really hated Bill Murray because I guess they did not get along well on that movie at all. So Richard Dreyfuss to this day does not like Bill Murray. So that is not a wound that is healed, which is
so it wasn't acting.
Telling, yeah.
Because he hated him in the movie too.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe that was the only thing. Funny how things happen. I mean, what year was that? Like 93, I think. No, 91. Yeah, I think so. Because I'm just thinking, because so he did around 93. He did a masterpiece, Groundhog Day, and that's the big splitting point because that's where he and Ramis split, and that seemed to be the end of Murray doing good movies for quite a while. And that made Murray even more annoyed because the whole thing that annoyed him in the first place was people were saying, well, we've noticed that the movies that you do are good and then there's some that aren't good. But the ones that are good all have Ramis. You can't seem to do good movies without Ramis, and he really didn't like that. And that was sort of what kickstarted the thing. And then, he spent the 90s doing shit.
What did he do during that period of time? I can't even think of anything. He did stuff, though. Oh, that fucking Dumbo movie. What was the movie with was it Operation Dumbo Drop?
Oh, is that even him? Wow. I didn't know that was him.
Maybe it wasn't him. He did a movie with a big elephant, though.
You're probably right. Hold on. I'm just going to check out the filmography so that we're...
Larger Than Life is what I'm thinking of.
Okay. Never seen that.
He did Kingpin, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, he was good in Kingpin.
He was good in As Boy.
Space Jam made no sense. He was just there for the ride because it's like, I can hang out with Michael Jordan. Wild Things was, I guess a lot of people were impressed by it because it's like, oh, this isn't typical Bill Murray. This is kind of like some serious acting from him. But I hate that movie and I could care less that he's in it.
A relatively small role too.
Yeah, Rushmore was cool. Obviously, that was sort of a comeback. Osmosis Jones was him still not getting it. Charlie's Angels was embarrassing. Oh, should never have gone near it. A lot of people don't like the 2000 Hamlet. I like it. I like the 2000 Hamlet. Corporate Hamlet, as sometimes people call it, with Ethan Hawke. I like it. He plays Polonius in it, and I think he's a pretty good Polonius. Royal Tenenbaums is a good movie, and I really like it, but he's not interesting or important in it. He's just sort of a forgettable throwaway character in it. But, yeah, so then Lost in Translation, I guess, is his big comeback.
Yeah, it looks like, so basically, like, Wes Anderson kept him afloat during the late
2000s.
To 2000s, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the only good movies he did in that time with him, except, I mean, Broken Flowers is a pretty good movie. But again, you don't really need it to be Bill Murray. Somebody else could have done it. Right.
That Ghostbusters video game is really good.
Oh, yeah?
The 2009, yeah, because all the guys are in it. Harold Ramis is in it. Before he passed away, it's kind of like an unofficial sequel to the movies.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really solid.
It would be interesting to look into. I kind of liked that live action Jungle Book he's in. Like, it's nothing special, but I kind of liked him as Baloo.
Oh, he was Baloo, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have to do much. He just had to make some quips, I
liked Christopher Walken.
Yeah, he was King Louis.
Yeah, King Louis.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up that Disney is now going to have to remake all of their old cartoons as live-action movies now.
They don't have to. They're just doing it because they're assholes that want to, retain their rights or something.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I saw The Beauty and the Beast, and it has some good things, but for the most part, why bother? The good one's already there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen parts of
And
it.
I respect Emma Watson for taking on a pretty difficult role. And she does a mostly good job. Like, she's a good singer. She's not a great, amazing Disney singer, but she does what she can with it. And she's beautiful. I mean, I'm sure it was sort of a dream come true for her to play a role like that. So, I mean, I guess I'm happy for her and stuff. But,
She's trying
yeah.
to break typecast, man.
Right. And as much as, and the thing is, I know I have a certain amount of bias because I'm in love with hand-drawn animation, but I mean, Jesus, compare the beautiful hand-drawn animation of that movie to the terrifying, weird CG animation of the remake. Like, look at the faces. Like, look at Mrs. Potts' face, or look at the face of Lumiere. It's awful. They look like nightmare creatures.
Yeah, I don't like those things. They're scary. They're scary.
I mean, they still do some impressive parts. Like, it is interesting to see that whole be our guest sequence with the dishes. Like, it's like, how are they going to do that live action with it? Like, they pull it off pretty well. But then again, like, as usual, like when you see a lot of these remakes and things like that, they feel the need to add in parts that nobody cared about in the first place. Like, they give us background about like who Belle's mother was and stuff. Like, nobody cares. It's not important. They have like a weird flashback to like her mom having like the plague in Paris and stuff. Like, we don't need that. No one cares. That's not part of this story, you know. And they seem to feel compelled to do that a lot in movies like this. It's like, hey, remember that throwaway line about this? You were wondering? Well, here's a 15-minute explanation on it, even though no one asked for it. But there's even a couple added songs that are pretty good. Like, there's a whole song that the Beast sings, like when he lets her go. Remember, he feels like he has to let her go to her father. He sings a song, about how he's sad about letting her go. It's a pretty good song. Like, so, the movie's, it could have been awful. Like, I could have absolutely hated it. So they did a pretty good job. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of the high bar, though. Like, I bet you Aladdin's going to be terrible.
Oh, Aladdin. Yeah, that's the next one. Yeah.
Will Smith as Genie. Enough said.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't. I didn't care to see Beauty and the Beast. I didn't like Jungle Book particularly either. I thought it was fine for what it is.
Jungle Book made more sense to me than Beauty and the Beast. Like, I get why you would do Jungle Book. Like, there's not really any sense in doing Beauty and the Beast, but that's my own logic. I mean, you could obviously argue with it, but in my brain, the way my brain works, one is defensible and one's kind of not. But that's just my own sensibilities there, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, Rob Reiner, Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and then North just smashes it. Yeah. And he hasn't done anything good since. Like, just a bunch of junk since. Like, North really put the kibosh on the career there. Because everything afterwards isn't necessarily terrible, but it's at least forgettable.
Well, he's a politician now.
Yeah. As we said, he's been lobbying to, like, I know that he had like activism and stuff that was like involved in film, like wanting to like censor films, like particularly smoking. I don't know if he's cool as heels about that, but like about, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, that was a big deal to him.
So what would that entail? Would that be like, let's go back and take these classic films,
like digitally remove the cigarettes,
say the Untouchables, and then
sure.
So these guys are just gonna be doing this shit with no cigarettes in their hand, blowing. I guess they'll remove the smoke too. I just don't see why use the why do it first of all, but I mean why use the resources just to do that? I mean, it was a part of our history. I just don't understand it at all.
I'm trying to.
I mean, I understand when Steven Spielberg wanted to remove the guns. I understand that more than this.
And it's pretty stupid itself.
Even that is stupid. Exactly. He's buying into that PC bullshit. Because, I mean, reality check, soldiers have guns.
I can't find any details on it. Like, this was a thing. I'm not imagining it. Like,
Oh no, I saw it on Wikipedia. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, there was more to it than just like him passing legislation and stuff. Like, it was something to do with like cigarettes in film. And now I can't find it. Like, I didn't just imagine that he wanted to remove it from certain films. I'm sure that happened. But I can't seem to find evidence of it now. Yeah, I can find that he did this political thing or that political thing, but no, like he had a stance about tobacco specifically in film. I know that's a thing. Just can't find any sort of.
And you know, like when you're the first thing listed on your credits of what you did in your career is activist. God, he must be a pompous ass.
Like, yeah, the way he gets like mocked and stuff for it by various people seems to suggest.
I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, you're a fucking actor. You were the butt of the joke on All in the Family. Then you became a extremely successful director.
Yeah. Yeah, he and Ron Howard sort of followed a similar thing, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought the same thing earlier.
Like second bananas on a popular show, and then into the 80s becoming successful directors.
With the exception of Arrested Development, I don't think Ron Howard has done any acting.
No, he got right out of it.
And Rob Reiner was in something recently. I can't remember what it was.
I saw him in a film kind of recently where he's pretty good. Oh yeah, he's in The Wolf of Wall Street.
That's it. That's what I was thinking of.
And he's fairly good in that. It's, again, just sort of a small role.
Yeah.
Man, his first ever on-screen appearance was an episode of Batman.
What? Wow.
He played a delivery boy in the episode The Penguin Declines in 1967. So that's pretty awesome.
Oh, he actually worked with Ron Howard in the Andy Griffith Show. I mean, yeah, Ron Howard. I'm getting their names mixed up.
That's interesting. Recently in 2 episodes of some sort of LGBT miniseries called When We Rise. I heard of that.
Is he coming out?
Of course, Gus Van Sant is one of the directors of that.
Ah, cool.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Guy Pearce is in it and stuff, playing a gay guy. And yeah, I was gonna watch that. I can't remember. Yeah. Anything else about Stand By Me or it?
One thing I wanted to mention was the production with children or with underage people.
Yeah,
it's kind of rough because was it Twilight Zone the movie? Some people died on. Some kids died on the production of that movie, and it was a big thing.
I knew it was a big troubled production.
Yeah, it was like what a helicopter. The big helicopter rig killed a bunch of kids. I forget the exact details, but
a helicopter accident. Oh yeah, a couple child actors. One of them, a Chinese, died. Yeah, you're right. And an actor named Vic Morrow. Yep. Two child actors were hired in violation of California law, which prohibits child actors from working at night or in proximity to explosions. It requires the presence of a teacher or social worker. During the subsequent trial, the illegality of the children's hiring was admitted by the defense, with Landis admitting culpability for that, but not the accident, and admitting that their hiring was wrong. So yeah. No, I didn't. I knew that stuff had happened there. I didn't know that anything happened affecting child acting laws. That's cool. That's interesting.
But it was a challenge. So the whole train scene, those are women running. Women stunt people. Yeah.
Oh, when they do like the far shot.
Yeah.
Oh. I guess they do it pretty well because I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
Yeah. It's 1959 or 60, but there's still a big steam train. I guess it's more dramatic, but there would not have been steam trains in the United States at that time. But it looks good.
Would have been coal at that point.
Yeah, at least. I think there might even been beyond that, but
Oh, really? Okay.
wouldn't have like all the smoke coming out the way it does.
Yeah.
Actually, so I guess not coal, because coal does that too.
Blowing that high pitched whistle all the time.
Well, I guess they blow the whistle if they saw people on the tracks.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't know a lot about trains. I'm not a big train guy.
No, I just know that trains by that point would have progressed to a more modern version, but it looks better on screen, so I get why they're doing it. They're like, it's in the past, so people will think it's old timey.
Yeah.
Like it's actually a little too old timey, but I don't care.
That's like pre-Civil War stuff.
Not going to take me out of the movie.
Yeah.
The train scene's very well done, and yeah, I would not have known in the long shots that's other people running.
Yeah, child labor laws, regarding that, or they're real weird. They can only work like a few hours a day. It has to be during the daytime, and there has to be a teacher on set with them, I think.
Yeah, that's what I just read. That's what I just read, like a teacher or social worker. Although, again, what are they supposed to do?
Well, they're there. They're going to class. I mean, they have to go to class too. Like they have to go learn.
Right, because you're not allowed to deprive them of an education, so they still have to technically, even though they probably don't need it.
Even though they're hired by the production company.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
You can imagine.
Yeah, and with and I mean, it's not like people aren't careful about like say sexual things. Like there was a movie. I remember a few years ago they did a movie about the Runaways. The band, the girl band. Yeah, so it had Kristen Stewart and Ellie Fanning in there. At the time, Kristen Stewart was like 19 and Ellie Fanning was 15. And they're supposed to have like a scene where like they make out and stuff. And they had like people on set to make sure that, and like saying that like Kristen Stewart could only like touch her a certain way and stuff because she was a minor, like ridiculous bullshit. But they have this sort of stuff, on to worry about because that's what it is to do with work with minors and stuff. So
I could totally understand that, man. They're just making sure they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's. Can't be too careful with that. Elle Fanning, man, she's just felt like a grown woman for a long time.
Well, I always thought it was funny because who was the first Fanning? Dakota. So Dakota was basically, to me, I have no idea if she did stuff when she was older, but to me, I'll always remember Dakota as basically a child actress. I'll remember Dakota playing young roles when she was young. Ellie is younger than her, but looks older. When I first saw Ellie, she's supposed to be like a 13-year-old in that movie, Super 8. And she looks like she's way older than everybody else. So it always threw me off. She's taller, she's more mature. Everything about her seems so much older and stuff. So yeah, it's sort of the same thing with me. Like even when she was young, she looked older. Like not old, but older.
Wasn't she the little girl in Signs?
Oh, I have no idea. I totally blocked one of the Fannings, maybe. I totally blocked out that movie. The funny is, I was completely satisfied when I saw that in theater all those years ago, but since then, I was just like, this is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
That's Abigail Breslin, I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I remember her too. Yeah, another blonde girl from back then, around that time.
Oh, she's blonde now.
Yeah.
She gets some help. But, yeah, Elle, was in that Neon Demon.
Yeah.
And
that was the latest thing I've seen her in.
Really did a great job in that one. Of playing that innocent, playing her, that's basically, kind of what she is, a new rising star. Yeah. Or was she a model in that movie?
Yeah, it was a model.
Model, okay.
It's about models.
Similar.
Model's a weird job.
Oh, man. Imagine the bullshit that goes along with that.
I couldn't do it.
Well,
Like I said, I had a chance to do some modeling when I was a kid, and I did not want to do it. My parents were like, okay. They knew that like sitting still and stuff would have killed me. So they were just like, no, it's okay.
God, she was born in '98. Oh, makes me sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Time marches on.
Let's see. She was in Maleficent as well. Did a great job in that movie.
Reiner's of a similar age to King, so I think that's one of the reasons that Stand By Me works. Is that you know, he knew the time period, he knew what it was like to be a boy at that time too, and he already had a good script and stuff to follow. But that's probably why he was accepting of the dialogue and some of the cursing and stuff. You know, you get words in there like pussy and stuff. Hell, you've got Corey Feldman saying it over and over again, like baiting. He's like pussy, 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 pussy.
At one point, Reiner's basically the same age as Stephen King, so.
Yeah, there you go. At one point, when he's yelling at Pressman, he calls him a faggot.
You know, until recent years, that was a pretty commonly used term.
I don't miss it.
No, I don't miss it. I miss the connotations we put on.
I got called faggot plenty when I was a kid, so you know, I don't have a very high opinion of it. Having it thrown in
I got called.
Thrown in my face all the time.
I used it quite a bit, and I got called it quite a bit. Yeah.
I refused to use it. I think I just felt like I was trying to take some sort of phony moral high ground.
No, I mean, I feel the same way about, you know, the word retard or midget. You know, I don't really think that these words should be, you know, condemned.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a difficult area, and I do some backsliding when it comes to like retard and stuff like that. Because I mean, yeah, obviously it's not cool to make fun of somebody like for some sort of mental thing and stuff like that. But that's not what people mean. So the way I justify it is like nowadays, I don't call people a retard. I won't say retarded. But I still use the term retarded, but I don't use it for people. I'll say like a decision or something. I'll be like, that's retarded. So that's my way of justifying it. It's like, I'm not calling somebody a retard. I'm calling us a situation or a decision or an act retarded. So take offense to that if you want, but that's sort of my line. I still feel like I should be able to use the word in those situations. But yeah, I won't try to, you know, call a person that. But I feel like I don't know. Like I said, maybe I'm just doing some backsliding. Maybe I'm just trying to justify it. I don't care. I feel like it's legit the way I use it. But if people are still going to be offended, well, okay. No offense intended. I think I'm actually very sensitive when it comes to things like that. Mental illness and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm too. I'm very, very sensitive to it. But it's just the power you give a word, you know?
Oh, for sure.
You know, like racial slurs, you know, they're only as powerful as you know, what you make them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like people put too much stock in that.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. I think they do put too much in that. Like, yeah, I don't back down from saying any word. I won't say, oh, the N word when you can say nigger because it's the word that's giving it too much power. For instance, because it's like there's a difference. Because like, I'm not saying because I get some thrill out of it. It's because yeah, I would never use a racial slur directed at a person. Yeah. But if I'm going to say it because it was in a book or a movie or something, then I will say it. I think that's a difference. It's a context. I will say it. It doesn't mean I love the word or I want to use it or hurl it at people. Mm-hmm. You know, just like the word faggot. I don't think it's a good word. I wouldn't call a person a faggot. But that doesn't mean if I'm talking about the word, I'm going to be like because it's not an evil spell. It's just a word. So,
no, I totally agree. It's just the world we live in now. It's like everything's got to be offensive one way or another.
Yeah.
Because I mean, retarded just means stunted, you know, and you're stunted, you know, mentally. Mm-hmm. But you know, what would be the correct terminology for that? They're mentally challenged, or is that? They're
only
slow.
in some cases. Oh, see, slow is already tricky. Slow is already, you might know on a.
I don't know what to say.
I know. Exactly.
They're special. They're special.
Yeah.
That's stupid. They're not special. They're the opposite of special.
I mean, honestly, the easiest thing you can do is you can just say retarded if you just put mentally in front of it, and that pretty much makes it okay. You can be like, oh, that person is mentally retarded. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's less harsh, huh?
Yeah. Speaking of which, it's funny. There are no mentally retarded people in The Body or The Stand. But if you want to talk about it getting offensive, Stephen King kind of plays with it a little too much in some of his novels, where he seems to enjoy the trope of having somebody who is mentally retarded and the idea that maybe there's something mystical about them. I mean, in the right light, that seems cool, but also it can sort of seem borderline offensive. So I'm not the type of person that's going to freak out over it, but I'm just saying he is a little bit playing with fire with some of that, and that's even in fucking Dreamcatcher.
Donnie Wahlberg nailed it, though, didn't he?
No complaints there.
He is.
Donnie Wahlberg might be the most underrated actor of his generation. There, I said it.
I know Mark would not be happy about that.
Yeah, well, Mark might be the most shoved in my face actor of his generation.
Mark Wahlberg is the Scarlett Johansson of men.
He's another one of those people that they refuse to realize is aging. It's like, yeah, he can play 35 from now until the end of time. No, he can't. Like, he hasn't been 35 in 16 years or something. And they're just like, yeah, he's 35. And he's a lot older than me. Okay. I know that much. I know Marky Mark has been around. When I was in grade school, Marky Mark was, out there earning money and stuff like that. So don't try to tell me that Marky Mark is forever 35.
It's like that new movie with Tom Cruise, whatever, where he's flying drugs around the world. He's married to a 19-year-old in the movie. It's like,
oh yeah,
give me a break.
Did I already say this before? Okay, so when I went to see it, they had some previews for some horror movies, including Jigsaw, which looks exactly like every other Saw movie, of course. Except now it really stretches credibility because it's so far in the future. It's like Jigsaw's been dead 10 years, but he's still fucking with us because he's I get that he's a master plan, but this has gone a little too far, don't you think? But anyway. So, but the other preview I saw for a horror movie was a movie you probably heard of called I think it's called Mother.
Oh yeah.
Right? So, you know how you often have these movies that they start with a couple. It's like, here's an ordinary couple, then they're out. And in this one, it's an ordinary couple living in some, out of the way cottage.
Right.
Here is our ordinary couple. The man is Javier Bardem. Okay. And his wife is Jennifer Lawrence. What? How old is he? Is he 57? She's 24? I understand. It's true. Such couples exist, but just shoving it down our throats that's always the case is ridiculous. I don't know.
Javier always happened. I mean, the guys just get older and the women stay the same age.
Yeah. I love that magic line that Hollywood has that makes everything okay. It's you're a 19-year-old dating a 16-year-old is some sort of sick fuck. But a 20-year-old dating a 60-year-old, oh, it's no problem.
That's true.
You're over the magic line, so everything's fine and cool now. Yeah, so. I mean, what does Jennifer Lawrence even think when she was offered that role? Did she just think, oh, I'm excited to be in this movie. Wow, I'm cast opposite Javier Bardem. He's a great actor. I'm playing his wife? Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Does she, I don't know.
Man, I can't believe Javier Bardem is in that movie.
Yeah.
That's a straight-up horror movie, right?
Looks to be, yeah.
That's probably not going to be any good then.
Probably not. I feel like It was finally a really good horror movie, and that's the best we're going to get for a long time. We've just been in a wasteland of horror for a long time. And I just want new horror.
Man, I saw a really good one last night called.
Like, there's going to be that new Halloween, and everyone's like,
I
"Oh, what's her name's coming back?" That does.
don't give a fuck about that.
I'm a huge Halloween fan, and I like the series. Even, and, I have a soft spot for some of the bad sequels. Obviously, we're not talking about Rob Zombie because I hate those more than anything. In case there's anybody left that doesn't know that, I hate the Rob Zombie Halloweens more than almost anything in the cinematic world. They fill me with rage that I won't go into. But yeah, I'm a big Halloween fan. So I'm just tired of everybody acting like, because I'm a big Halloween fan, that I think that, like, integral to Halloween's success was I always want to say Jodie Foster, but it's not Jodie Foster. It's
Jamie Lee Curtis.
Jamie Lee Curtis. It's like, Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back. I have never, at any point in my life, cared that she is in those movies. It makes no difference to me that Jamie Lee Curtis was in the first movie. It could have been fucking anyone. That is not an... Laurie Strode is a good role in the sense of slashers. Yes, in the context of slashers, Laurie Strode is a pretty good role. But in the context of movie roles, in fiction, Laurie Strode is a nothing character. She's just, okay, she's there to scream and be chased around, and then maybe have some final confrontations with the killer. It's a slasher. And yet everybody's acting like now, well, she's coming back for this movie, so that totally legitimizes it somehow. I'm really excited to see Laurie again. Like, I don't want to criticize people because you can like a movie and a series for whatever reasons. I'm just telling you people, as a big, huge Halloween fan, I do not like Halloween for the same reasons you do, clearly. Because Jamie Lee Curtis is not some sort of perk for me. It's not like, and Halloween has Jamie Lee Curtis. No, she's just there. And I don't have a complaint about it. Like, and again, what kind of logic is this anyway? She came back for fucking Resurrection.
Didn't she die in Resurrection?
Yes.
Okay.
This isn't going to be a sequel, though. This is like for the third time them saying, okay, this is just ignoring all the sequels. It's like following Halloween 1 and 2 again. So I think once again, we're pretending nothing happened. It's Halloween 1 and 2, and now whatever the hell this is. And I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. If you want to be excited and think that it must be good because Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back, go nuts. But it means nothing to me. I like Halloween a lot. I like Halloween 2 a lot. But Jamie Lee Curtis, to me, is not what made those movies good. You could have put some other actress in there to do the same thing. Not saying any other actress, but let's not give Jamie Lee Curtis and the role of Laurie Strode so much credit. Laurie Strode is not, I don't know, Pocahontas or something. She's a final girl. I wouldn't
agree with that. I do think she does a great job in 1 and 2. And I like H2O for what it is, but
I don't think she does a bad job at all.
I think I feel the same way about her as I do about Ripley. Sigourney Weaver in the Alien franchise. I don't know why they keep having to go back to her to keep.
I get it a little more with Ripley. To me, Ripley is a real character with depth that does things and says things. Laurie Strode to me is just a final girl.
Ripley was a clone of a clone of a clone, though. I mean that.
Well, yeah, when they did all that bullshit.
That's what I'm saying.
But I mean, originally Ripley was at least a compelling character. I mean, yeah, they watered her down and turned her into stuff. But I just mean, I understand.
Compelling character.
What's that?
I thought she was a compelling character.
Laurie Strode?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I'm not going to tell people they're not. But okay, I'm just going to say again, for me, no, she's not a compelling character. She's just an okay character. I don't need great characters for Halloween. It's slashers.
I feel like she's got more depth than, say, the average Scream Queen, though. I mean, it's not like,
I'll agree. I agree with that.
And,
But you must be on my side when I say, like, the fact that she's coming back should not just be some sort of, like, sign that it's legit and definitely going to be good.
I mean, people.
She came back for H2O, and H2O wasn't a disaster, but it was at best mediocre. And then the other one was god awful.
Yeah, I have no. I mean, I'm not excited about it at all. I mean, if it happens, I'll watch it, but I don't know why it has to be the.
I just feel like things I've read lately, it's like just this explosion of excitement, like, oh, this legitimizes, like, now we know it's going to be good. I'm like, oh, come on, people, haven't you watched these movies before? Maybe, and I'm not saying the movie won't be good. I just feel like this is not a sign. This does not prove anything.
Oh, I've seen the exact same thing. I haven't seen anything negative about it at all. It's like, oh, fuck, shit, oh my God. You know, that's all I've seen is just, you know, nerds going crazy about it, which is fine.
Like I said, that's fine. Just don't expect me to join in.
I don't really want to see like a 70-year-old woman like run from a psychopath.
Yeah, I mean, the whole formula is young women running from it. If you want to get on us about sexist and misogyny again, fine. Again, that is slashers.
No, it's just the nature of the movie. I mean, and she died like at least like twice before.
Yep.
Whatever.
But again, they're just doing away with that.
Again.
Which I guess is fine, and I mean, I don't even mind. And I'm somebody that like is okay with the 4, 5, 6 continuity. I'm okay with that. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh yes, get rid of it. Like, I kind of enjoyed it for what it was, but at the same time, if you don't want to make it canon, that's fine. Like when Halloween H2O came out and I realized it ignores 4, 5, and 6, I was a bit annoyed. And whenever I watch Halloween H2O, I can do some mental gymnastics that make it still exist in the same timeline. It's not too hard. You just have some like people faking deaths and stuff like that, and then it works out. Basically, all it was think about it. If you want it to fit, all Laurie did was fake her death after Halloween 2 to the point that Michael's totally fooled. So then he just changes and decides to go after Jamie. But anyway, that's not a huge deal or anything. But yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's.
I mean. See, Halloween 4 should have caused more of a stir than this, because Halloween 4 was legit because it was bringing Michael back. Michael was gone, and they were bringing Michael back. That's something to say, oh, let's get excited about. But especially after the weird... I love Season of the Witch for its weirdness, but I hate it as a Halloween movie because it's got nothing... All it is just, you know, using the name.
It's not a smart marketing... I guess in hindsight, you know, we can look back and say,
"Oh yeah, no, I don't have any problem with it from that perspective because I understand what they're trying to do. They're like, okay, Halloween will now be an anthology thing with different standalone things. I totally understand that. That's fine. It's just too bad that you picked such bizarre, crazy, crappy weirdness. Well, maybe again, I can enjoy it many years later, but only because it's so ridiculous.
Maybe they should have told people that Michael Myers is not coming back because at that point they were used to the Friday the 13th formula.
Yeah.
We're used to the
same. I have no idea. Did Season of the Witch do well? Obviously it didn't because it prompted them to go back to the normal formula.
It's the same mistake that the Friday the 13th, the series made because, you know, the dude had the rights to the name, but not Jason. So he made this show about these people that ran an antique store that had to go chase down haunted antiques every week.
Yeah, I saw some of those way back in the day, but I can't remember any of it. But the main thing I remember was, it doesn't have anything to do with Jason.
Where's Jason? That's what everybody wants to know. I mean, at least Freddy's Nightmares had Freddy in them. Actually, I take that back. He was just like the Crypt Keeper. He was the
very first episode was about him, and then after that, nothing. Yeah. I still haven't seen it. I'd like to see that episode.
Yeah, the first episode's really good from what I remember. Is like it
shows like his trial and stuff, right?
I think.
I think that's what it is. It like shows like after he gets caught by the cops in his trial, and how he gets off.
In between, he gets burned in between the burning.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to be about.
Maybe I'm thinking of another episode then. I would like to own all of those, or at least be able to watch them somewhere.
I know. So that's been going on for years and years. There's no. It's one of those legal things, right?
Probably. I finally got the Monsters show that I'm a big fan of that one. Same type.
I don't know. Don't know it.
Anthology horror.
Don't even know the title.
It's good. Well, some of it's good.
Well, yeah, a lot of these shows are up and down and stuff. But you get that.
Yeah, I've been going through the Tales from the Dark Side. I need to start doing that again. I think I'm on like season 3 now. And it was so many episodes in a season. Like 30 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So demanding back then on television. Like sitcoms, they do like 40 episodes a season, no problem.
Yeah.
UK's
It's
doing
definitely
like
time to watch some horror again.
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person that watches horror all the year round. Very rarely. And like I really took it off last year. Like I hadn't watched horror. Like It was the first horror movie I'd seen in forever. But now they're getting October. I did see a horror movie the other night, locally made one, which is pretty cool, called The Crescent. It was one of the ones at the Atlantic Film Festival that's going on right now. But made by a director from here. What's his name? Something Smith. Seth A. Smith. He did a movie a few years ago called Low Life that I haven't seen. It was like some sort of like really trippy type of movie. It was about drug addiction, but it was like it had like a fictional drug and it had some guy that like takes some sort of fictional drug and hallucinate and shit. Anyway, I never saw it, but it was pretty well received. That was a few years ago. And so this is his follow up called The Crescent, about a young woman whose husband dies and she's got like a 3-year-old boy. So to sort of like recharge, she goes to this like cottage by the ocean that her mother owned and stuff, like this weird little remote cottage by the ocean, and then like weird shit starts happening and stuff, and low budget obviously and made here. And I was impressed. It was a cool movie. You probably enjoyed it because some originality. I mean, so not completely original because we've seen this sort of thing. Some spooky stuff in there, dead people standing in the surf and stuff, staring. But no, I mean, it was good. It felt good to support something local. As usual, I'd like to do more of it, but every year the Atlantic Film Festival comes around, I never really have much money. But tomorrow, yeah, I'm talking about horror. Duh. The big thing that I already bought my other ticket for is Suspiria tomorrow night. They're showing it.
Oh, yeah.
Uncut, so I'm really excited about that. That's going to be
good.
It's going to be a cool experience.
Is that in 4K?
I don't know what it's going to be in. I think so, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the print going around.
Yeah.
I
know it's uncut. They're saying it's uncut. It's supposed to look really good. So I'm interested in what kind of crowd's going to show up for this because, Suspiria is like a classic among horror fans, but it's not, it's not an average fan type movie. Like the average movie person doesn't even know who Argento is, so. I never underestimate the festival crowd and the hipster crowd, so I'm assuming a lot of people will be there.
Yeah, I always think that when I go to stuff like that, I'm thinking, there's nobody's going to be here, but it's usually pretty crowded.
Yeah. No. Yeah, another movie I could have seen on Sundays when I saw The Crescent, but I could have seen earlier on the day was they were not a new movie, but another one like Suspiria doing a screening of was Stalker by the Russian guy that did the guy that did Solaris and stuff. I've seen Stalker, and it would be interesting to see in a theater. It's a long movie though, but I could only buy tickets for so many things. Crescent cost me a goddamn fortune. I don't mind because I'm trying to support local people, and that's fine. But it's a lot, so yeah. You spend $30 on a couple tickets. I can't get any more. It's too bad.
Tarkovsky?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. His big one was Solaris, which I love. I love that movie. But he pretty much he's right up there with like Kubrick and people like that. Like pretty much everything he does is a big classic. Stalker's really weird. It's cool though.
Yeah, I've seen Stalker. It's been years ago though. I don't remember much about it.
It's not like sort of like a normal narrative type movie. It's pretty bizarre in the way it unfolds and stuff. And it would have been neat to see in theater, but I had to make a choice there. But there was no way I wasn't going to see Suspiria. Tried to get a hold of Ryan, couldn't get a hold of him for whatever reason. He's going to regret this. He's going to feel bad that he didn't get to see it.
So this is not the Toronto International Film Festival. This is
this is the Atlantic Film Festival, specifically for my area. But not all the films are from here. Some of them are international, and some of them, as we said, are just screenings of older classic films and stuff. But yeah, a lot of it is from around here. There's a whole bunch of they do short films too, but I've never seen any of them.
As I've seen TIFF, going around, the people talking about all the films at TIFF.
Yeah.
So, which a lot of them seem to be the same films they're showing at the.
Yep. I think so. Like that Andrew Garfield is one of them.
Oh, really?
There's an Andrew Garfield film, stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted to see Crescent for two reasons. One, because it is local; it's a Nova Scotian film, and two, it was a horror movie. So I was like, that's pretty cool. And I wasn't disappointed. It was a good movie. And I mean, you know, I don't live in California like Cameron. Cameron has all these stories and all these people he's met and stuff like that. Like, but for me, seeing a movie and then like having like the cast and crew stand up and like be right there in the theater afterwards is like a crazy experience. Sure, they're not famous. They're not famous at all, but they were in the movie. That person I just saw, that creepy guy, he's right there. You know, that's neat for me. You know, I don't have big famous movie experiences, so it's a neat thing. I was actually so tired. I've been awake for a really long time when I saw the movie and stuff. And I mean, it wasn't even a long movie, but I was really counting to get out of there when it was over. But they had a Q&A afterwards, and I felt like I'd be a dick if I just got up and walked out during it. So I like stayed for the Q. It wasn't long. It was only like 15 minutes, but I was really tired and wanted to go home. I was like, I gotta wait. People keep asking questions.
Yeah.
But no, it's a good time.
I hated this movie. Walk out immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. Most of it was shot not a place I've actually been around, but I mean close enough. It was in somewhere around Lunenburg County and stuff like that. I mean, it looks a lot like places I've been. But the very start of the movie, they're in a place I've been, a place that's in the city called Dingle Park. She's walking along the water there. I was like, oh, I used to go there with my girlfriends. So that was kind of neat. And plus, there's also this part, it's funny. He did the thing that seems to happen in all movies ever since the first Friday the 13th, where you have to have like some crazy homeless guy talking. And there's like some guy where she's walking along with the kid, and he just pops up and he's asking her about the bus, and he's asking her at the 52. And I'm like, I ride the 52. But yeah, that's just like a prerequisite for a lot of horror films. It's like, before all the weird stuff happens, we should have some like crazy homeless guy babble some stuff. It'll set the tone properly.
That's funny.
So Suspiria tomorrow night. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, I saw a really good horror film last night that I've been wanting to watch for a while. The Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
It's Brian Cox is in there, and he's always good. And Emil Hirsch. I haven't seen him in anything in quite a while. So
he's a guy I've lost track of.
After Speed Racer, I haven't seen anything he's done, but
yeah,
he's still bumping.
He was sort of a rising star, but then he just made movies I really kind of hated. Like he was in like Alpha Dog or whatever it was called, which I hated. He was in what was it, Into the Wild or something, which I hated. You know, so I was just like, screw this guy. But yeah, Autopsy of Jane Doe. It's made by the guy that did Troll Hunter. I know.
Yeah.
Andre Ordenval, or however you say it.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it has some messy stuff in there. He seems to go for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's cool. Probably one of the better horror films I've seen, next to it.
That's cool.
It's few and far between. I don't really watch a lot of newer horror films anymore, unless they come.
Well, because a lot of them are pretty bad. Is the thing, right?
Well,
I don't want to pick on it too much because it's not like we ever had a great golden age of amazing horror films. I mean, sort of, but at the same time, there's still plenty of bad ones. But yeah, I remember. I guess the first horror movie I watched in a long time was a few weeks ago on Netflix. The Bye Bye Man popped up, so I was like, I'll watch this because I watch horror, and it's it was pretty damn bad.
I've heard it's really bad.
Yeah.
Well,
it's even one of those films where the premise kind of falls apart if you think about it too hard, because it's supposed to be about how like once you like know his name, right, like he kind of drives you insane and stuff.
Right.
But the thing is, so you can't tell somebody else's name or the same thing will happen to them. So it just seems to come down to like characters trying to kill off people because they know they told them the name. But I'm just thinking, but this would be exponential. This would like spread way worse than the way you're doing it, because everybody you told would go through the same thing. I'm like, you're running, because it opens with like a guy like back in like the 60s, like with taking a shotgun to these people, in his neighborhood and his family and stuff like that. And he's just like, do you remember the name? She's like, what? And he's like, do you remember the name? She's like, yeah. And he's like, who else did you tell? And like, then he blows her away and he goes across the street to kill some other people. And I'm thinking, But the whole thing is, once you know, it's supposed to happen to you too. So they should all be freaking out doing the
Yeah.
same thing. They should all be pointing guns at each other and stuff. So, like, I don't know. It all sort of falls. And, of course, it has the same ending as you'd expect, where it's like, oh, well, it's contained for now. But then it's like, uh-oh, this thing got out. Someone else is going to find out, you know. I don't know. It seems like it just wasn't too well thought out. And it's not that entertaining in the movie in the first place.
Kind of playing on the Slender Man? I think doesn't the cover kind of look like Slender Man?
I guess so. It doesn't remind me too much of that, except that it's a name. Except that it's a name, I guess. Slender Man would be more scary, to tell you the truth.
Let's see.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised some of that creepypasta stuff hasn't become movies. Hollywood's so bankrupt for ideas. Why isn't like every creepypasta we've ever heard of a movie by now?
It's kind of sad that that's the kind of shit that's like better than anything Hollywood can come up with.
Yeah, that's the new horror. Come on, Stephen King, what are you doing? Don't you have anything left? There's plenty left, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think his classic horror period is over. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, he was incredibly productive. He made some amazing classic stuff. I mean, yeah. If there's anything we can take away from this show, it's like it's nice to see some of his work done properly on film, because so much of it hasn't been. And he has really good writers. He's just like a super accessible writer, right? Like, you don't have to be like a person that reads a lot of heavy literature. Maybe you don't like, maybe your idea of a fun afternoon isn't reading Dostoevsky or something like that, and that's fine. You know, Stephen King is your guy, maybe. He's got nice stories, but he's not as schlocky as sometimes people seem to think he is either. Sometimes he just gets this reputation as like some hacky, schlocky horror guy that just, you know, and I get it for some of it, because yes, he is the guy that like that wrote, say, The Running Man or Christine and things like that. Yeah, like, so he can go to that place, but he has a lot of times where it's just really good quality storytelling, to tell you the truth. And The Body's a great example, and it's nice to see it well done as a stand. As I said, to reiterate, I think it is the best adaptation of his work ever. Great work by just everybody involved. Well shot, good soundtrack. Even the changes they make are actually mostly for the better. I love Kiefer Sutherland as Ace. The added scenes, and all four of the main boys are all cast really well and played really well, and you can tell they had good chemistry with each other.
Yeah. That right there.
Probably as a guy, it hits you a little harder because it reminds you of when you're boys, but I'm sure plenty of girls and women can enjoy the story too. It's not like I don't enjoy stories that have, you know, stuff with girls or women about when they were younger. I like the Now and Men movie now I think about it. Most of it. It's hard to remember. I should track it down and try to see it again. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Is that like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants? Is that like that? Seems like that movie like that.
I never saw Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, but it seems like it's a little more... I don't know what the word is. I don't know. Is it the Yaya Sisterhood?
Is it? Yeah, is that like that?
I don't know. That's, again, it's just one that pops in my head. I haven't seen it. Girl movies.
What about First Wives Club? That's kind of like that.
No, I saw the Joy Luck Club, which is also a pretty. If we're going to talk about a good adaptation of a book, that's a good adaptation of a book. Joy Luck Club.
I've read the book. I haven't seen the movie.
Yeah, I read the book and saw the movie, but it was ages ago.
Steel Magnolias.
Never seen that one either. Wait, which one is Steel Magnolias?
Julia Roberts is in it.
Is that the one? Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, women friends and like somebody's a hairdresser.
Yeah, I think they're all hairdressers.
Yeah, I've seen parts of it because my mom like literally made me watch it because she likes it. Yeah, like it's in the South, isn't it? South somewhere, and one of them has like an abusive husband, and one of them has like cancer.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen a lot of that because my mom likes it.
Fried green tomatoes.
I like fried green tomatoes a lot more than that one.
Isn't that like a coming of age thing? No.
It has a well, not so much. It has a couple flashbacks, but it's more about adult women bonding more so than coming of age. It's like
Can't think of any.
about a friendship.
Mermaids?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I think the closest you're gonna get with the whole young thing is like Now and Then, because that actually has scenes of them when they're girls. I mean, if you want one like that only has one girl, obviously you've got what is it? Fuck, why does this keep happening to me? We need Rambo Raff. He always finishes for me whenever I can't think of movie titles or actors. No, the one with Macaulay Culkin and stuff. He dies.
Oh, no, My Girl.
My Girl, yeah. Like, I guess the two My Girl movies are good coming of age movies for girl, except it's only really focused on one. It's not like a group of girls. It's not like a group of friends. But no, for the group of friends thing, the only thing I can think of is Now and Then, which isn't a bad one because the girl stuff is back in the 70s, which is kind of neat. Not that you need to always set it in the past. I guess you could set it now. I'm just saying.
We need to. This is a untapped side of the.
Oh, you thinking we should do a more female-driven movie?
Yes.
Okay, well. Okay. So we will look into that for the future. We will look into that, people, for the future. And if you have any suggestions, you should let us know. And maybe we can do a couple of more female-driven ones, or ones with like a largely female cast or something. We are open to that for sure.
I searched women coming of age movies on Google, and Stand By Me came up. Nope.
Because it is the absolute pinnacle of coming of age. I'm telling you.
I kind of missed the first word there. It's not very many. I've seen most of these too, like Ghost World, Clueless, Bend It Like Beckham.
Clueless, I guess. It's a little older. I mean, it's more teenage, but sure.
Yeah. Heather.
That's like one of the very few like really 90s movies that I don't like. I'm just like, that's just all the bad parts of the 90s. I don't watch Clueless.
I don't like it.
Yeah. Isn't that like Alicia Silverstone?
Mm-hmm. Paul Rudd?
Yeah. Never liked her.
Yeah. Well, so we go ahead and wrap it up if you want.
Yeah, that should do it. Stand By Me. One of my favorites. Happy to do it. And as we said, get in a little general Stephen King talk, and of course talking about It. I know our friends on the other show have talked a little about It, but I would not recommend watching that because it doesn't have my insight.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, if you have nothing better to do, sure, go ahead. But I'm not going to watch it because if I do, I'll just think of all the things that I would have said if I was there. But sorry, lost a little focus there for a second. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, we haven't decided on next week. If you guys push the female thing hard enough, we might even do that next week. We'll see. No promises, but yeah,
a good film to do. I'd be totally open for it.
Yeah. So if you guys think of one. So we will devote our energies looking for one or two to see if there's one. Yeah, like a good sort of female coming of age type thing, maybe. Even dip into maybe even look into a foreign film for that. Who knows?
Yeah, that may be a better idea.
It's possible. I'd rather not watch Towelhead again, though. That once was enough.
No.
Once was enough. Aaron Eckhart loves his really uncomfortable movies, doesn't he?
He does quite a few. Fish Tank is a good one. Have you seen Fish Tank?
I have not. What's that one? I don't even think I recognize the title.
It's British.
Okay.
Michael Fassbender's in it. I forgot. It does actually have a pretty big actor.
That's interesting.
Really solid.
Okay, I will look into that.
Blue is the Warmest Color keeps popping up. I haven't seen that one yet. I know what it's about.
It's just more romance, though.
Yeah.
It has a super intense lesbian sex scene that you should definitely watch.
Oh, really? Awesome.
It's really intense, like to the point where it might as well be porn.
Speaking of lesbian sex scenes, Heavenly Creatures.
Hate that movie.
I don't care for it either. Virgin Suicides. I don't like that movie either.
I actually think I still have that recorded. I like it okay. But that's a really weird, like, to call that a coming of age movie wouldn't really be right. Like, it's too off kilter. Like, who's going to relate to that? No, it's just more of a specific, really specific, weird thing that happened to people in childhood. It's not really a coming of age thing. Yeah. Like, Stand By Me, you could say, well, that's specific too. Yeah, but it's not specific like this is. Like, I actually do like Virgin Suicides, but no, I wouldn't use it as an example of a coming of age movie. Just a movie.
Oh, here's a good one for you, Juno.
Yeah, it's too snarky.
The Mean Girls?
Yeah, that's a good movie, but I don't think of it as coming of age. It's just more of like a snapshot. It's a good movie. I like it. I guess we could do Mean Girls. I don't know. Could we talk for like over an hour about Mean Girls? Like, I don't know if we could. It's a very straightforward movie.
Yeah, it's
like, that's not a criticism. It's just sort of what it is. It's not like a very deep movie. There's not too many themes in there beyond like the normal, you know, social stuff that kids go through, you know, wanting to fit in and the way they pick on each other and stuff.
Could do the Joy Luck Club.
Yeah.
Well,
I haven't seen it in a lot of years, so yeah. We will think about it, people. So I think that we'll wrap for now. But thanks for being with us as always. And that really does do it. Sorry, I'm drifting. I don't know why. I'm not, you know, but the end is in sight, and I'm not getting to the finish line.
We've been on here for a while. I think we're both kind of tired.
Yeah, I think I'm just zonking out a bit. Sorry about that, guys. Usually I have more energy and focus. But yeah, Stand By Me, very good. The Body, very good. If you've only read like Stephen King's like horror stuff, this is a really nice collection because these are solid stories that aren't horror that show, you know, some of his talent and the variety and stuff like that. I'll probably do some more Stephen King reading as time goes on, and I am getting back into a horror mode. By October, I'll just be rewatching all my favorite classic things, you know, as that goes. I always try to save the best ones the closer I get to Halloween. Things like that, which we'll discuss probably in other areas. But no, I don't see us really necessarily tackling any horror in the future on this show. But, you know, you never know. We try to keep open to everything and stuff like that. But at the moment, we're not following any sort of specific theme or anything because for a while we'd already done a series. So right now things are fairly open-ended. But as we said, what we have decided is that maybe we have a goal of doing a female coming of age if we can, and also just maybe a movie that is more female-centric for the hell of it. Joy Luck Club is certainly a possibility, but if you guys have suggestions along that lines, you can let us know. We'll definitely check that out. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. I think we're finally going to wrap.
Thanks, guys.
So thanks a lot from the Pocket Dimension. I'm Cole, that's Jay. Have a good one. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.